So, I watched a lot of BL lately. For those of you who don't know, BL or boys love is a specific genre of romance that focuses on the love relationship between two males. Mainly written by women for women. I cannot remember which one was my first and how it appeared on my feed. It must have been the Run BTS supercuts that I binge watched for a few weeks as a substitute of seeing and interacting with real people because I'm too lazy to leave the house. But I am fascinated. I have seen moments of brilliant romantic storytelling. Let me tell you, I have had a bout of butterflies in my stomach just because of how tense and cute a scene was at the same time. Never had that before. I sobbed away a life's worth of repressed emotions and self-hatred with a character into the arms of his lover and witnessed confessions of love so vulnerable and raw. The pain haunts me to this day.
我们再一次好不好？我们重来一次好不好？
However, something was always missing. No matter how beautifully acted, shot, or written a lot of the scenes were. Whenever the climax rolled around, the part of the story that should finally burst this pustule of worry and longing into a blissful eruption of vicarious emotion and a dose of oh so sweet oxytocin was supposed to finally flood my bloodstream. I felt either nothing, totally baffled, or anxiety.
我怎么可能只让你当特助啊？我至少也会让你当技术长。
但是技术者不能一直在一起。
告诉他 Amor, stop being so controlling. Until So, in this video, I will juxtapose History 3 Trapped and two other shows of the same genre to explain how it was able to succeed where all the other shows failed, and the element that was put in place to give History 3 Trapped the chance to not only have emotional moments, but to weave them all together into a story that is effective and satisfying until the end. As a drama, but most importantly, as a true romance. A tale about the power of intimacy and love. In storytelling, the main ingredient that will get the audience's pot of emotions all hot and bubbly is conflict. When you look what basic elements a text must have to be called a story, you usually get this. There is a protagonist. The protagonist wants something and has to face opposition in order to get it. So, in order to achieve an effective emotional climax in the audience, one of the main tasks a storyteller has is to orchestrate this very conflict, build it and release it in the most effective and thus satisfying way. One classical template on how to do this was introduced by Gustav Freytag. He proposes to start your story with a phase of exposition in which no real conflict is present to introduce your characters and what it is that they want. Then, in an inciting incident, the access to this desire is suddenly blocked or threatened by the antagonist, directly or indirectly. This is the moment the conflict is introduced. And this is also the moment when the story starts, because that is what a story is made of after all. all the things the protagonist is forced to oppose, learn, lose, and fight in order to get what they want. To keep this constant struggle interesting and entertaining, Freitag recommends to continually intensify the conflict from the inciting incident to the climax. This is usually achieved by a constant raise of stakes, meaning the closer the protagonist gets to the goal, the bigger and more dangerous the hurdles, and the bigger the potential loss. Great. But what does any of this has to do with romance? Where does opposition in a love story come from? Let me just... Ah, there it is. Oh! In his book, The Anatomy of Story, Truby states that in a romance, in terms of story function, the lover is actually the main opponent. If you want the sparks to fly, you need blades to clash. How often is it that it is the lover themselves standing in the way of what the main lead wants? However, if opposition in a romance comes from the lover-to-be, how come we achieve a happily ever after and do not end up with one or the other dead like in a traditional drama? For a romance, Billy Murnett proposes an additional antagonist for a main lead, one that is so powerful that can only be faced together, and even then, never defeated. Because against this foe, survival and growth can only be achieved by total surrender. Lending a true romance its defining theme: love itself. Murnett states, therefore, in an effective romance, during the exposition, we usually meet our protagonist loveless or in the wrong relationship. And it is not only their soulmate they meet when the goals are challenged in the inciting incident, but the frightening power of love and intimacy itself. And during the raising action, they rejected, let their guard down, rejected again, accepted more and more, until in the last moment, when everything seems lost, they give in completely, lay themselves bare, and get not what they wanted, but what they needed, by succumbing to the transforming power of love, in what Murnett calls the joyous defeat. They lose, but win after all. Now, let's see how Trapped fares in all of this. In fact, it takes History 3 Trapped all but 5 minutes to introduce its main leads and set them up as each other's main opponent. In modern Taipei, we meet Tang Yi, a young and handsome boss of a mafia family, right in the middle of a tense meeting with a fellow mafia leader, which gives us a clue about what it is that he wants right away. He's in the process of going legitimate. He wants to leave illegality and the drug trade behind to ensure a quiet life for everyone who works for him, free from persecution by police or other drug traffickers. A mobster with a heart of gold. But not only that, the scene is also full of hints about his personality. We see how he stays cool when the other guy threatens him, traces of arrogance when he is faced with the evidence of his mobsters breaking mafia law, and meticulous, not only in his appearance, but in his mind. Turns out, the meeting was a setup, planned by Tang Yi to rat his rival and his crew out to police. Now, who would be the perfect opponent to a determined and calculating criminal? A determined and slightly chaotic cop? Fun game. Take a shot whenever you see this strand of hair sticking out until the end of the video. Meet Officer Mang Xiaofei, scruffy, impulsive, and wearing his heart on his sleeve, and with only one thing on his mind. He follows him outside, and we already get our first direct confrontation that tells us Officer Mang has had his mind on Tang Yi for several years, risking fortune and career just to find a way to get Tang Yi in custody. Yet he always failed, as he does today. And at the station, we are being filled in on the origin of his vendetta and why he is bound to be in Tang Yi's way throughout the show. 4 years ago, Mang Xiaofei's mentor was shot, and with her, Tang Yi's adoptive father. And the only person who can help Mang Xiaofei solve this crime is the one surviving victim, Tang Yi. How about our second source of antagonism? Do trust and partnership already rear their terrifying heads? Well, not yet, but we get glimpses of what could make our two leads mistakenly think they might be immune. When a colleague in episode 1 brings up the possibility of love between a criminal and a man of the law, Mang Xiaofei rejects the very thought of it.
暗恋你的头，他是黑道，我是警察哎。
Tang Yi's resistance, on the other hand, becomes evident in how he treats the person he trusts and loves the most. When his adoptive sister warns him of other mafia bosses that might plan to retaliate and kill Tang Yi, and begs him to let her help him, he refuses. He needs no one, and lets no one in. He is used to handling things alone. And these notions will both be challenged in the show's inciting incident. The moment in the love story where the leads see the other as a potential lover for the first time. And the romantic conflict is finally introduced. Leading up to this, Trap manages to raise the stakes and tie the two leads together even stronger. So Tang Yi meets up with yet another mafia leader. The guy gets killed the same night, and Tang Yi's cufflink is found on the scene. Although Tang Yi is cleared eventually, he has now a second task on his plate: finding the guy who's trying to frame him. Whereas Mang Xiaofei has worked the very case Tang Yi was a suspect in, meaning Tang Yi might not only have information about the death 4 years ago, but also about the recent one. Mang Xiaofei follows him to a place Tang Yi's unknown foe frequents and where Tang Yi hopes to find him. The two of them cross paths, and they do what they always do. They fight, but unbeknownst to them, they're also fighting love. With Mang Xiaofei seeing Tang Yi only as the criminal that stands in his way, and Tang Yi aborting his mission to find the guy that framed him rather than teaming up with someone else. Two strategies of defense that soon become useless when love attacks with her most tried and irresistible opening weapon.
Good morning.
Yeah, I know. I know what you want to say, and you're right. This is not the most original maneuver a romance has ever pulled, and tried does spell tired for a reason.
Welcome home, baby!
But our other contenders also used forced proximity in one way or the other, and Trap did a pretty good version of it. They both had business being there. When coincidence is the kryptonite of a good story, we have a pretty solid chain of cause and effect. It was their belief standing in the way of intimacy and love that led them to being captured and isolated after all, and that is now being challenged. When Mang Xiaofei begins to realize that Tang Yi is more than a source of intel, more than a criminal or a prince, but a boy that had to learn how to scheme and kill and run, not out of fun, but to survive the streets. Like when Tang Yi tells him how, as a kid, he practiced the skill of escaping a handcuff, he had to break his thumb over and over again. But he did it without hesitation, because in his world, it is the only way to stay alive. And for Tang Yi, now that he suddenly has to fight with another person, he cannot hide it anymore. He craves closeness and intimacy as well. And of course, he reverts back to his old ways when the forced proximity's force is all spent.
这人到底是谁？
没有啦，只是一起在山上过了1天1夜而已。
But we know it, and so do you. He is not just a man you spend a night with in the mountains. He is more, and even more is what he needs to become, now that we enter the phase of rising action. And again, the show is so deliberate and effective in its writing. It gives you the basic layout of how this is going to play out right in the next big scene the two leads have together. So Tangyi gets home from the hospital and he realizes that the lighter his adoptive father gifted him is gone. The lighter Xiaofei was not allowed to touch. Has he lost it there? Never to be found again? Tangyi is in panic until suddenly Xiaofei shows up. Out of relief and gratefulness, he invites Xiaofei to a meal. And would I have preferred that what is about to happen to be tied to our 2 open cases better? So they talked not only mundane stuff, but also plot? Yes. But all of this does not matter much, because let me tell you how artfully the show uses this mundane stuff to convey everything we need to know about their characters
需要点饮料吗？
and their relationship status, the current and the future one. Like, look what happened the last time they sat on a table together, so... But the divide is still huge, as it should be. But just watch how wonderfully it is telegraphed to us by showing what they eat and how they eat. After being initially approachable despite himself, Tangyi is closed off again. To break the ice, Mang Xiaofei mocks him for his drink.
吃辣配什么热茶？你是老人哦。
When Tangyi still refuses to talk or share his dish with him, Mang Xiaofei attacks with a challenge. He wants Tangyi to try his spicy food with Mang Xiaofei's Coke. Tangyi refuses, making Mang Xiaofei help himself to Tangyi's food and his drink. And as this still does not give him the reaction he wanted, Mang Xiaofei finally changes seat. And it is only then that Tangyi relents and tries something the other has ordered. So, through sheer will, Mang Xiaofei was able to not only keep them stay put at the table together, but technically share a meal by Tangyi taking a disgusted sip of the Coke, only to wash it down with a huge gulp of tea. And now, guess which one will be the one who is hard to get, and which one will never hesitate to fight for them being close, and who dares his criminal counterpart into accepting a gift that mocks Tangyi's cold demeanor, but jumps into protection mode the moment he is attacked, even going so far as to make himself the official police protection when he sees him shrugging the danger off, and who calls himself and Tangyi friends when he's asked what they are, and who becomes jealous as hell when his man is getting all touchy-feely with another guy, and who admits it. And when he knows that his man is in danger, begs to be given the chance to protect him. And guess who is the one we hear is always distant, even to good friends?
这么久没见，我都不会想我。你确定要我常来吗？
The one who demotes his sparring partner to being a half-friend, although he tried to save his life minutes ago. But guess who also, when his half-friend has a conflict with his beloved sister, mends the rift and explains what she means to him.
他是刑天盟里面唯一一个我能够完全信任的人。他就是我，我就是他。
And who's almost shy when being caught drinking a Coke. But guess who still, when reminded of how close he has grown to his dedicated bodyguard, makes it clear that there is nothing between them, that both only use the other for their respective goal, and sends away the man who went out of his way to get a chance to protect him when the climax nears. Guess who sets the stage himself for love's last attack with her darkest and most vicious arrow in her quiver.
Te quiero. Te quiero, joder.
Cabrón, han tenido que matarme para que lo dijeras.
And guess who is the one who jumps into action without a second of hesitation to shield the person his man holds dearest in the world, giving his life without a second thought. And who of them needed the challenge, the threat of losing everything, to finally surrender and to finally accept that he might be able to muster the courage to have someone by his side, accepting to get not what he wanted, but what he needed. In the end, to be the one to close the distance. Grab this new life without hesitation and try it in an enthusiastic, unrestrained gulp, succumbing to the transforming power of love in a joyous defeat. He loses, but wins after all. Let's take a look at our other contenders, shall we? As it should, KinnPorsche is right away busy with introducing us to its leads, showing them in their respective natural habitat. And personality-wise, they do already make formidable opponents. Porsche, a young bartender who is easygoing, charming, and comes around. And Kinn, son of a mafia family who's presented as cold, focused on business, and you know. How and why would they resist love? It is not presented as directly as it is in Trapped, but you can infer from the way Porsche treats the ladies. He has no interest in responsibility and commitment. Porsche wants fun. And when Kinn ends up at his bar on the run from assassins, Porsche helps, but only hesitantly. And in episode 2, we are being told that Kinn, although a middle child, had to become his father's right hand after his older brother had been kidnapped and, in the aftermath, due to his PTSD, was not fit for the job anymore. And that Kinn had not always been this paranoid and cruel, but a kind man who loved his people. Could it be that the unforeseen responsibility of being a future mafia leader made him deny himself any type of compassion or love? Now, how can we bring them to fight so that while fighting the other, love is able to sneakily obliterate all of their defenses against partnership and trust?
Good morning.
Told ya. In the first episode, Porsche is threatened to lose his and his brother's home. He tries to make money, but it is not enough. Kinn's father, having seen Porsche fight, sends Kinn to recruit Porsche as a bodyguard, but Porsche is proud, running away from this commitment by literally jumping ship. Then we find out his uncle gambled away all of their money. Porsche has no other chance. To save his brother and their home, he has to give up fun and freedom. Will he learn to take responsibility and overcome his hatred of being tied down and be ready to make sacrifices for others? And Kinn, can he free the young man inside of him that yearns for connection and trust from under the weight and the armor he had to put on, being the heir to a criminal empire?
มึงก็อย่าลืมว่าตอนเนี้ยชีวิตมึงเป็นของกูแล้วชีวิตกูเป็นของกูเดี๋ยวมึงก็รู้
Not so fast. The bigger the resistance, the sweeter the surrender. Episode 2 and 3 are basically a battle of wills, with Porsche not liking to be given orders and Kinn longing to force the loose cannon in his staff into doing his job. But the inciting incident, the introduction of the other as a potential romantic partner, is near. There is something that fascinates Kinn with this proud and unruly man we're being shown. And Porsche? He is competitive. He is a fighter. He overcomes part of his defiance and begins to gain respect for his competence among his co-workers and Kinn's brother. And when Kinn takes him to a mission for the first time, He's not only the first one to take control when they're being attacked, he literally takes a bullet aimed at the man that tried everything to break him until now. And that man is impressed. And after it is Porsche who deducts that the shooting must have been an ambush orchestrated by a mole in Kinn's team, Kinn cannot deny his attraction anymore. On a party after the mission, the proximity is suddenly not forced, but wanted. When they are alone on the pier, Porsche, proud of his accomplishments and happy to have fun again, even if it is only for one night, dares to share that he's more rattled by the attack than it seems, and how difficult it is for him to come to terms with killing a man and now being a criminal and a mobster himself, just like the loan sharks that brought him here in the first place. And Kinn, drunken by the night and the victory, the first time seeing this man not as an opponent, but someone he can trust and could work with, gives up all of his defenses for one moment. How did the writers choose to up the ante during the rising action to come and keep our two hopelessly smitten, lovey-dovey cuties from entering the haven of a committed partnership prematurely and thus from becoming boring? Yep, it is certainly a choice. Not one that I find particularly helpful when you're planning on sending your couple into a relationship that is healthy and does not entail one partner having trouble to respect the personal boundaries of his lover. One cornerstone of trust, the thing that humans need to love and be vulnerable. Okay, let's see how I can sell this to you as a necessary and meaningful plot point. Well, I already sold you the rest of this mess, so Porsche has forgotten the kiss. Yee! And Kinn, right, have someone make him go evil again. Vegas, he is Kinn's cousin and scheming to undermine Kinn's position in the hierarchy and is ready to use Porsche as a pawn. On an auction, he drugs Porsche, plans on raping him as a message to Kinn, but Kinn interrupts him and saves Porsche, and when Porsche vomits from the drugs, he takes him to the bathroom to clean him, and then it is Porsche who initiates it and dares him to continue where they left off. You see, it is drugged Porsche who was too insistent, and Kinn, he longed to be close to someone for so long, and how could he resist? You know, this isn't working. Things like that can be a meaningful plot point, even in a romance. But Kinn does not nearly eat enough shit to be redeemed. And an apology? Sorry, that is not enough to signal change. Let's pretend it did not happen. They had an argument. Porsche is mad. Kinn feels merely guilty, I guess, but then his dad scolds him for not having Porsche kept from drugging himself and almost getting raped. This is hard. Kinn being evil again, guarding his lonely heart in this hell that is the world of the mob, reverts back to what made him survive until now. Being cruel, demanding submission, wielding his power to gain control again. He punishes Porsche in front of the others, showing that their bittersweet night meant nothing. Porsche seeks time alone, and he ends up in the arms of Vegas, oblivious to the fact that it was Vegas who attacked him at the auction before Kinn took advantage of him. Kinn is livid. He does not know, or he cannot tell Porsche that it was Vegas, who knows. But their fight escalates. Porsche seeks Korn's permission to leave and gets a week off. Kinn has a change of hearts. He comes to Porsche's house. He wants to be nice, and he is, and then he is not. I mean, Porsche's not helping. How can we force them to finally let trust and forgiveness into their hearts, lose the armor they build even stronger around themselves, and heal the wounds they inflicted on each other? Thugs kidnap them. They fight douche together and end up lost in the outskirts. But it works. Kinn opens up how much he had to give up for his position, like following his dream, living by his own compass and his own heart. And he does. He apologizes to Porsche, and when they're finally freed from their forced proximity, he lets Porsche go. He lets him run away from this life to pursue the freedom he can never have, even if it hurts, when he was finally ready to love. And Porsche, with the trust the other man offered him, he was able to forgive. And he feels it. When Kinn offers him to leave, he hesitates. He feels it. He must, because why else would he come back? He feels it. And if not then when they are overpowered and a shot is fired at them. And it is Kinn who shields him. He feels it and he surrenders to love. A love that does not only seek pleasure, but a love that makes you want to make sacrifices, to protect and to commit. Both having lost to her, but one after all, in a joyous defeat. And how did I do? Again, our first scene is dedicated, just as Freitag had envisioned, to getting us to know our lead. Jean is a writer, clearly struggling. He is a successful BL author, and his publisher wants him to churn out yet another bestseller. Alas, he cannot come up with anything. His personality is then presented to us when his assistant drags him to the casting call for a BL series based on one of Jean's novels. He hates being around others. Romantic love for Jean only exists on the page.
Now that's what I call
a lead that put up a fight against trust and partnership. But who could challenge him in that? Wear him down in constant conflict to allow for love to dismantle all of his defenses. Yeah, love itself. Wait, what? He is literally the actor to play a character that Jean envisioned as a romantic interest. Nupsip embodies what Jean finds romantic and desires. And he has no personality. And he has only one objective: to woo Jean and bring trust and vulnerability into his life. What was that? And if it is not Nupsip as the embodiment of a past character, he definitely inspires a new one. It is Nupsip who finally gives Jean the idea for a plot. But being with Nupsip on the page is one thing. Accepting love and all its messiness in real life is another. When they meet and Jean is flirted with, it's too much. And while you wonder how one could create a situation in which a recluse would come into regular contact with his emotional interest logically and naturally...
Welcome home, baby!
They live together at the end of episode 1. for reasons. But say what you will, they spend a lot of scenes together. And Nupsip, like a siren, makes the case for romance and domesticity. But Jean resists. A man doesn't change that easily. And even if he has slipped up, he soon denies any type of feelings or change in himself.
มากเลยนะไปไหนมาไหนก็ถามหามึงตลอดเลยอะไม่จริงอะติดบ้าติดบอแหละ
No matter what happens on page or in his fantasy. Well, this battle is in dire need of a change of tactics. Jean is out for a meeting with his old college mates. Suddenly the topic comes to BL, and since usually women write BL, the idea is entertained that Jean might be gay. This is visibly a sore topic for him. After Tom steps in, Jean gets drunk. And no, this time no one gets taken advantage of. Nupsip brings him home, and although in his confusion and desperation, like Porsche, Jean is asking for it, Nupsip does the right thing. He declines. And it is this that brings Jean to finally allow himself vulnerability and real closeness. He asks for it. No false pretenses, no play. It is just the two of them. And when the time arrives for Nupsip to move out, the man that wanted nothing more than to be left alone and make love only in his fantasy asks him to stay. What big reveal could the writers have come up with to keep them in conflict until that final moment they surrender to absolute trust and intimacy? Could Jean's manuscript get leaked and him and Nupsip be outed in front of the whole world? We have a BL theme here. Is there maybe a shrewd cast member with a detectable influence on their relationship? A strangely erotically loaded kiss scene between Nupsip and Aoi? A threesome? Or something that could connect Jean's life to the outcome of the show and keep them apart? What? Childhood friends? I did a whole thing with love on the page and writing, and how does this connect? Oh, so he goes home to his parents. He brings his neighbor a cake and he sees the picture. Oh, Nupsip is her son, and Jean never saw any photo. Oh well. And then he drives home and he throws Nupsip out. Aw, but why didn't Nupsip tell him his reasons? Right, he didn't get the chance. Bummer. Oh, he cries. Wow, that is surprisingly intense. Well, that sucks. Why would Jean take her back in the next episode? I mean, this guy, he's a creep. He's been lying and plotting for weeks. And he obviously has not mentally aged since his childhood. Although, I will say, seeing the flashbacks now, his child self seems far more emotionally reactive and cognitively complex than his adult version. And he realized that... What? Okay, is it the apology, or is he also the only friend he ever had? I don't get it. And then Nupsip shows up at his doorstep, and because he's younger than Jean, and Jean can't fall in love with someone who's younger than him. I don't even know what to say to that. Oh, and now they kiss. Jean's gonna blue ball him and treat him like shit from now on? That tracks. There it is. You go, Jean! He remembers that he did love Nupsip when they were children. Not in a romantic way, but love still. and that love in reality is not like it is on the page. It is messy, and that he will love not only child Napsip, his friend, but adult Napsip, his lover too. Messy and complicated as he is.
When Napsip appears on his doorstep to explain that he only lied to Jean because he feared Jean would never accept him as his adult self,
a young man in love with Jean forgives him, embracing love and partnership, not as a fantasy, but a beautiful challenge with all its risks and all its beautiful new things, getting not only what he wanted, but what he needed, in a joyous defeat.
Well,
that wasn't so bad.
No, that wasn't so bad. But why making a video about how Trapped is the only BL romance that is consistently good and thematically, when the other two shows also ended perfectly fine?
Oh my god!
I sure hope these shows have some other sources of conflict set up to bring us to the climax without boring us to tears or dragging the leads through so many petty arguments and heinous betrayals for the sake of tension that you just want them to die. Most stories within a specific genre revolve around the same dramatic question. In romance, this question usually is, will they or won't they? However, since most viewers know the ending, how do you keep the middle part interesting? Especially if you have not only 90 minutes, but up to 14 hours to fill. One way of solving this problem is to have them do it, but only in a way that does not fundamentally change the relationship status quo. Yeah. Ever wondered why there are so many amnesia kisses in romance? Because they literally allow the narrative to eat its dramatic cake and still have it. That is, enough to keep you craving. Alas, there are only so many times you can pull that trick. Plus, we're here for the love after all, so why not just live it halfway through? Yet, the action still has to rise. In this case, it is neat to have some extramarital conflict at hand. Let's look at this first, because boy oh boy, do these shows throw conflict at you to keep you interested after the deed is done. We already know the dramatic question that dangles over KinnPorsche's head. And the antagonist sure does his job. He drives Kinn into Porsche's territory, and it is the main justification for hiring Porsche. While Porsche is adjusting, in episode 2, it takes a bit of a backseat. But we do get a surprise attack by a ninja lady that lets Porsche shine as a bodyguard for the first time. In episode 3, after Porsche took the bullet for Kinn, he adds yet another foe. Because if the guy who wanted to kill Kinn was able to use the debtor to do so, he must know Kinn's schedule. The plot thickens further when we find out that Kim, Kinn's younger brother, seems to have been on the main baddie's track much longer than anyone else. And he seems to think that Porsche and his little brother play a part in the conspiracy. The conflict goes back into simmering mode when Kinn and Porsche pick up the pieces after their first hookup, with Kinn wondering how to smooth things out and Porsche if Vegas might be the better catch. But it comes back when we need some forced proximity. And as our leads are finally bonding, it waits in the wings, politely, just to return with full force to ensure the heroic sacrifice that propels our lovers into the safe haven of partnership. And with that being settled, the non-romantic conflict finally comes to the fore. We hear that now that Kinn is off the streets recovering, other gangs are rebelling, and it must be Dawn from scene 1 who's pulling the strings. Why him specific? So they infiltrate a casino that they knew would be attacked by the rivaling gangs to catch someone? Well, they do catch someone, but don't worry about it. The important thing is Vegas saves the day. Plus, The minion was Don's after all, so they hatch a plan to lure him out, and Vegas is allowed to take the lead. And Porsche. They kidnap one of Don's drug dealers and use the truck as a Trojan horse to face Don. Why all of these shenanigans when Kinn just met him without much effort in episode 1? They kill Don, and that is that. But hey, remember Kim? He was suspicious of the fact that a random barfly like Porsche would be recruited to be Kinn's bodyguard and wonders if Porsche's parents, who were killed in a car crash, allegedly, might play a role in that, adding yet another pressing question to the mix. Meanwhile, in the same episode, Porsche and Kinn are, well, fluffing around, but then Porsche begins to see a man following him. Could it be the ghost of Tawan, Kinn's ex-lover, whose betrayal and subsequent death made Kinn into the tsundere he is today? Yes and no? Tawan is back and he is not dead? He has an offer though. He will trade evidence about the mole for protection because someone tries to kill him. Kinn believes the man who betrayed him way back when and chooses to go get the USB stick, only the two of them. However, jealous Porsche bugged them, and when Kinn finds out, he imprisons him. But no worries, Vegas to the rescue. He just strolls in and offers to help Porsche prove his innocence, since now everyone thinks he is the mole. But oh no! Porsche's brother gets kidnapped. Vegas then tells Porsche that the Yakuza are behind everything and where he can find his sibling.
It's a trap!
But oh no! Now Tawan has run away, and he awaits Porsche with his little brother in cuffs. Meanwhile, Kinn has sent Pete to Vegas' place to find out who the mole was, suspecting that not the Yakuza, but the Minor family was behind it all. And there, we finally meet him. It's Ken! No. You have seen him. He was here in the bag. Oh, shoot. You didn't. Because he was so irrelevant. But hold on. We also find out who wanted to kill Kinn to seize power from the Major family. Yeah, he has a proper villain monologue about how he installed the mole and shared all the information about Kinn with the Yakuza and the Italians. And that it was him who put Tawan back next to Kinn, promising marriage. And all to lure Porsche into this trap to frame him. Because now that Don is dead, the Yakuza threatened to tell the Major family about Vegas' shenanigans. Why? Remember Kim? He drives Vegas away, and now the brothers are safe. But oh no! Guess who is not dead? Again! He helps this guy to finally have some plot significance, buying time for Kinn to arrive, who knew about Tawan's double play all along? But oh no! Guess who has set up a bomb? Great, so now we have dramatic question 1 and 2 answered. Still 4 episodes to go. Now, remember Porsche's uncle who gambled away the money for the house? Guess who made that happen? Porsche listens in and is sad. He confronts Kinn's dad, who reveals that Porsche's parents were killed by a friend of his, and he only made him become a bodyguard to help him. But Porsche feels betrayed and does not want to be a bodyguard anymore, and just leaves. But Corin follows him to finally tell him the driver's name. Porsche then wants to take revenge, but stops when he sees that the guy has family. Kinn is proud, and they swear their love for each other. But oh no! Remember Porsche's uncle? He shows up to tell him that he will reveal who really killed Porsche's parents. But he wants money, and he hands him a photo of his parents and Kinn's dad. And remember Vegas? He is technically on the run from everyone, but offers to help find Porsche's uncle. He keeps his promise. Uncle tells us that Porsche's parents were not killed in a car crash, but shot by someone in the family. But before he can reveal the name, back at Kinn's dad, we are being told that Porsche's mom was his foster sister. And when Porsche's dad wanted nothing to do with the family, Kinn's granddad ordered Kinn's and Vegas' dad to kill Porsche's dad. And well, it was Vegas's dad who shot him, and then Mom died out of grief. Then this happens. Shortly thereafter, in a meeting of all the heads of the local mafia families, suddenly everyone uses Korn's death to challenge Kinn's reign. Who are all these people, you ask? What power do they have? Don't worry, because now a gang war is afoot between Kinn and Vegas's dad. His goons storm the premises Braveheart style, shooting all over the place. And in the midst of the bullet hail, guess who shows up to join the fight? But on whose side will he fight? Gun Tango. Vegas utters the best line in the whole show. But KinnPorsche gets saved by Matchbox Ex Machina. But oh no! Vegas' dad stops them. He tells it was not him, but Kinn's dad who shot Porsche's parents. But they get interrupted so they can follow him into Korn's lair. Because guess who was not dead? And guess who else isn't? Yeah, and guess what Korn reveals? He has hidden Porsche's mom away all these years so that Vegas' dad cannot SA her. Vegas' dad refutes this and is finally ready to spill the beans, but oh no! Kinn's dad tells Porsche he did this all for him. But oh no! Guess who's also back? Hey! Vegas! He wants to avenge his father's death, but does not, and then he leaves, and no one stops him. And Mom is not quite there, but everyone is happy, and guess who gets to be the head of the minor family now? And then we end. Yeah. Oh no. One more scene. And another one. You think that was a lot? Again, one major antagonist is present from the get-go, posing a dramatic question with her presence. And again, she does a fine job as a plot catalyst, shoving Jean on set. And this is where we meet yet another threat. Aoi, the young actor playing the other main lead. His evil plan? Making him and Nupsip trend. Wow pops up once more, giving Jean porn for inspiration, and that is basically episode 1. While episode 2 was all dedicated to the two lovebirds adjusting to living together, we are introduced to a third antagonistic force, this time for Nupsip. When he's unable to kiss Aoi because of his love for Jean and fakes an illness, we are being told that the producer Fa has a habit of firing whoever she wants. 2 scenes later, well, again, this time in a dream, pressuring Jean, but just as Mephisto, she's the evil spirit that cannot help but to create good things. Seriously, it's her research porn that makes Nupsip offer to show Jean the real deal because he has learned in a workshop. Next episode, she pressures him for spicy scenes again. Next scene, Aoi shows up and asks about Jean's writing. And we know he's up to no good because Nupsip warns Jean to not be generous to Aoi, although Aoi has been nothing but friendly to him. But we get a clue why Nupsip might not like him. Could Aoi have a crush on Nupsip? Both villains then take a break when Jean's evil friends catalyst Jean into Nupsip's bed for the inciting incident, but pop up in episode 5 where, guess what? Bois pressures Jean for a spicy scene. Later, Jean is on set again, doing... Aoi reaches out to Jean to ask for advice on how to pursue Nupsip, and we know now it is time for us, the viewer, to fear for our beloved dynamic duo, because, oh my god, the music. Evil scheming Aoi lands yet another blow when he finally musters the courage to ask Nupsip out, to confess his love. And Nupsip has to accept because Jean does not jump up to say no. And then Aoi takes his final strike, when Nupsip, at last, is professional enough to kiss him. And then Jean steps out and he sees Aoi kiss Napsip on the cheek for a promotional lie. Ooh. But Napsip posts a picture of him and Jean 4 scenes later, and people ship them more than Aoi and Napsip. But Tom urges them to lay low to not compromise the promotion. Yeah, put a big pin in that, because we will now meet yet another antagonist amidst the flashbacks of Jean's and Napsip's childhood romance. Dad does not like it. Episode 8. Well, you know the drill, but then Napsip's brother shows up and he smells the rat of their love and suggests to inform their parents. Put a bit in that one too, because we're now on a promotional event. Napsip and Aoi have to do fan service, and Jean we get a battle of Napsip Aoi shippers versus Napsip Jean shippers, and jealous Aoi ambushes Jean in the restroom. Napsip saves him only to warn Jean again to stay away from Aoi again without giving a proper reason. Is that why Jean meets up with Aoi at the hotel bar when he is ready to tell it all? But guess what we finally find out? Aoi is not in love with Napsip, but with Jean? Napsip can come to rescue Jean again. Jean and Napsip have for the first time, and Aoi must help Napsip to finally do his job right. But no worries. Remember that? Yeah. Napsip and Jean are invited to a dinner with both of their families, and Jean does not want to hide it anymore. I sure would have liked to see that inner struggle on screen in some capacity, but Dad's gaydar is pinging hard. Then that happens. Everyone is in shock, but not Dad. Dad is mad and tells Jean to go upstairs. But Jean does not have it. He pulls out a gun. No, not a real one. And definitely not a Chekhov's one. This one was tucked away so perfectly, I don't even know Jean knew it existed before he found it in his hands. And then he goes upstairs. So the families do not speak with each other, and we spend 6 scenes at home until Dad finally does come around, telling him he was not mad, but only afraid of the obstacles Jean would face when choosing this path. He gives his blessing and an emotional speech. Yeah, put a pin in that. So, remember that there was a show to shoot and a book to be written like 2 episodes ago? Yeah, so the show goes to the beach to do promotion stuff, and Jean and Napsip frolic in the water. But oh no, they have been filmed and Thai Twitter is on fire. That makes Aoi go into antagonist mode again, as he streams an emotional live and raging his fans. And no, any publicity is not good publicity. In this universe, everybody's on the same page. This relationship has to end. Hwa, MIA for the last 3 hours, pressures Hin into breaking up Jean and Napsip. He fails. Napsip, sensing the climax, pressures Jean into promising him to face every obstacle together. Yeah, put a pin in that. Hwa, who has obviously never heard of hate reading, warns that no one will buy their books anymore unless him and Napsip part ways. And when that does not work, remember Tom's sister? The boss of Napsip's management firm? Yeah, me neither. She teams up with Hwa to break the 2 lovers apart because money and product placement. Oh, this is getting a little overcrowded. I guess we're fine with Dad. Napsip says no, and it is Aoi of all people who is kinda on his side. Alas, Jean cannot take it anymore. He breaks up with Napsip, and they all cry. But as an avid romance watcher, you know there is 1 more episode to go. And now look at that press conference that is scheduled to dispel all the rumors about Napsip and Jean's secret romance with all the players present. Now, this must be the moment when Jean finally takes his dad's advice and sticks to the promise he made to his lover and stands up to confess his love to Napsip in front of He doesn't. Now, flash forward for 4 months. Well, again, do we get a lovely scene that could mirror the first one? Only now she has learned the errors of her ways and will not pressure Jean into a writer's block? No, she tells Hin, not Jean. And as to Jean, he has no idea how to end the novel. We see Aoi for a scene and the camera revels in his tears. Forever. Jean goes home to his parents to find inspiration. There he remembers his love for Nupsip from way back when. And while you are still wondering if this is all a dream sequence, it's not. They are back together, just like that. Nupsip's contract is over, so Fa has dematerialized as an antagonist, I guess. And so they can have their happy ending. Well, that was some non-romantic conflict. But don't let yourself be fooled by all the... This is still supposed to be, at its core, a love story. So even if the romance-related dramatic question was answered by midpoint, we cannot have this thread come to an end yet. The lovers still need to be antagonistic in some way. Because without antagonism, no conflict. And without conflict, no dramatic question. And without a question in the viewer's mind, no interest. And no interest means no emotional catharsis. And because we are in the phase of raising action, stakes should get higher and higher. Let's see how KinnPorsche tries to maintain and or raise its romantic tension. So remember the midpoint? The moment of major change within the leads in their relationship? This heartfelt mutual promise? And the string of selfless acts that prove the trust they did gain in each other? Well, forget that. Because in episode 7, Kinn gets jealous because of Vegas. Again. He instructs Pete to spy on Porsche, which allows him to intercept Vegas' advance of a, again, drugged Porsche. And then they have drugs again. Then in episode 8, when Porsche is being followed by an unknown man, he breaks into Kinn's room, goes through the phone of the man he loves and whose biggest self-stated wound is that he cannot trust others to find out if the stalker is Kinn's ex. But it's fine, they talk. And then, guess who's back? And guess who's jealous now? This time, Tawan does everything to ensnare his past lover. And when Kinn seems to fall for it, Porsche rather makes up a clumsy lie than talking to his boyfriend to tell him he is uncomfortable with him and Tawan holding hands. And guess who, instead of speaking, secretly plants a bug on the man he loves and whose biggest self-stated wound is that he cannot trust others when he goes with his ex to get the stick. But this time, they're not fine. Kinn imprisons Porsche, the man he loves and whose biggest grief was to not be free anymore and be used like a tool, and who took not only a bullet for him but gave up his freedom and an arm out of love. But don't worry, when Vegas breaks Porsche out to stop Tawan and his evil plans, Kinn will surely finally team up with the man he loves, fight side by side. Oh no, he lets him leave with Vegas. Probably just to be able to enter last minute and stop Tawan from shooting the man he loved to run from an explosion. Porsche's mad that he didn't tell him and used him as a tool. How do they solve this? Angry kissing and makeups. Guess who's jealous at Kinn's new bodyguard? Kinn's rich friends call Porsche a love slave of Kinn's, and everyone is fine with it. And guess who does stuff again without telling the man he loves? And guess who is spying on the man he loves because he does things without telling him again? But it's fine. We find out it was Kinn's dad who made Kinn lie to Porsche. But they resign. But before we have time to wonder why they never walked away before, when it was that easy, Kinn's dad comes back. And although Porsche could not kill his parents' alleged murderer, they are back in business again?
Who wrote this?
And they swear to trust each other from now on. But wait, Uncle comes back in the same scene, and they don't trust each other again. Guess who's back and plans stuff with Porsche that Porsche will not disclose to the man he loves, but put that on a hold because Kinn takes Porsche to the grave of Porsche's parents to ask for his hand, and Porsche's face and the music tell us everything's fine. Then they make out, and then Porsche does stuff with Vegas again about which he will not tell the man he loves and risk his life for. Twice. And because of that, it is only when the lose that they meet again and wonder whose side Porsche will be on. And Porsche says, on your side. But when Porsche points a gun at Korn, Kinn steps between them to tell him that he will be there for him. What does that even mean? Next, remember Midpoint? When Jean made the brave leap into this complicated world called relationship, and Nupsip swore to never lie and scheme again? Ah, well. In episode 8, Nupsip wants to call Jean his boyfriend, and Jean hates it. When Nupsip later asks for a kiss, Jean is super reluctant. The next day, Jean tells him to move out of the condo to start over and give everyone space. Guess who threatens not to leave and has to be pressured into giving back the key? But don't worry, Jean's face tells us it's cute. And when they talk the same night, the first time as equals, no lies between them. What do you think they talk about? Would Jean show his feelings for the first time? Does Nupsip share a deep-seated fear he never dared to... Nope. Nupsip asks if Jean has eaten, and Jean wants to see his new apartment, and Nupsip does not show it. Because guess who bought the condo right next to Jean's? But it's cute. Nupsip is allowed to kiss Jean on the cheek. However, the same day, Jean makes it clear he does not want to be taken care of and that they're not dating. Then, finally meaningful conflict. Oh no. He's fine. But wait, at dinner, Nupsip insists on peeling the shrimps for Jean, who said earlier that he does not like this kind of stuff. So Jean insists that Nupsip peels a shrimp for his brother as well. Trust me, it's cute. Guess who enters the condo without being invited after promising to never do the exact same thing? Jean is afraid of his parents knowing they are a thing. Nupsip tells him he will wait until Jean is ready, and Jean pulls his hands out of Nupsip's as if he touched a snail. Jean is jealous at Aoi. Oh, no. Aoi is jealous at Jean. Nupsip comes to the rescue, but will not tell why Jean should stay away from him. Why? Nupsip interrupts Aoi's kissing attack on Jean, who never had any qualms with rejecting Nupsip, and drinks the drink Aoi ordered for Jean. At home, Nupsip scolds Jean for making him worry and makes Jean promise that none of them goes anywhere without telling the other. But don't get spooked out by that. It is time for a major tonal shift. Remember the drink? Jean gets word from Aoi that it was spiked with Viagra. And Jean freaks out. Unfortunately, I cannot use the real music, but let me give you an impression of the sonic landscape of their first scene. No. Jean likes it. Nupsip tells him he does not have to force himself to do it, but Jean is like, it's fine. And then we get this line out the Dubcon handbook. Yeah, it's, well. And the next morning, Jean, who seems super uneasy all of a sudden, wants to leave. But Nupsip does not let him and orders him to go back to sleep. And is it just me or does this sound like a threat? Nupsip carries Jean to the bathroom, although Jean clearly does not like it, and then says, thanks for yesterday, because it must have hurt. And Jean makes that face. And Jean does not want to kiss because of morning breath. But guess who just pretended to have Viagra in his system, although he promised to never lie again and do things under false pretenses? And, is it just me, or does he look overly gleeful in the face of Jean's discomfort? Later, Jean is afraid of Nupsip getting bored with him, but Nupsip says he isn't. Mom rings. At the family dinner, Nupsip says he can wait with the coming out. And after they part to sleep in their respective childhood bedroom to await the verdict of the families, he says that he will be with Jean either way. And Jean? And then they are united again. And Jean is back to being his old grumpy self. Oh, shut up, Jean. He already told you. They watched the first episode and look how joyful they are. Nupsip appears and Jean looks annoyed. Jean shaking off Nupsip's hand. Jean startling when Nupsip appears, looking annoyed. Oh look, Jean fell into the pool. Nupsip carries him. Nupsip tells Jean that he can play with a stuffed dragon Jean liked as a child, but only if he does not pay more attention to it than to Nupsip, and looks menacing and totally at a loss when Jean leaves to do something else, as if he stops existing until Jean comes back. It's so cute. Jean knows Thailand ships him and Nupsip and is okay with it, but the lovers? They don't talk about it. Nupsip, smelling the rat that is Jean's feeble love, asks Jean to promise him to not leave him when shit hits the fan. Next scene, Jean leaves Nupsip when shit hits the fan. Because reasons. Nupsip says, "You are a pushover." Yeah, Nupsip, this is how you got him. Jean dreams of Nupsip, but it is not a dream, it must be real because Jean is looking annoyed. Jean is his brand of cute. Nupsip forces Jean into promising him to not leave him again. Yeah, we all know how that went the last time. Jean is repulsed, and Nupsip has to put Jean's hand on his own face to finally get a caress. I ship it. They reminisce about a scene that I sure would have liked to see played out on screen, but... And Nupsip says he does not want it to end. Well, I do. Okay, sensing a pattern here? Well, yeah, if we are being generous, you could say that the narratives were able to maintain some sense of conflict. I mean, the couples were like bickering constantly, but in no way were the stakes raised in any meaningful way, ramping up the romantic action until its eruption. Instead, we got an endless string of scenes with big declarations of love and trust that were literally undone by the actions of the characters in the very next scene. Never a moment of culmination or any meaningful, lasting change. I mean, kudos for portraying how shitty relationships look in real life, I guess. But for a story that strives for an epic showdown? However, this failure of raising the romantic conflict in a meaningful way is not only a structural failure, it also becomes a thematic one. By treading water like this, the two stories do not only shoot themselves in the foot as a drama, most egregiously, they ultimately kill their romance. Execution style. I mean, how reliable and convincing is this oath of unbreakable love and loyalty we are being fed in the end, when we have seen them breaking their promises in the past ad nauseum? How can I not expect Kinn and Porsche just to go online to each other and stabbing each other in the back and being just terribly unprofessional leaders when I have not seen them for once being a good team? Plus, what are these stories supposed to tell me about love anyway? That love happens between more than two people and that you should prioritize the needs of third parties over the person you love? And that it is okay because real love can be resumed when the coast is clear? Yeah, and I cannot even come up with something for them. Yeah. And of course, you can tell any story you like, but I think this was not what the writers intended. I mean, look at this scene. That was... However, this being larger than lifeness, this being ready to give a limp out of loveness and giving up your happiness for someone else's gets completely lost in the endless regurgitation of pettiness and jealousy and... I mean, Midpoint's Kinn would not have to put a gun to Midpoint's Porsche's head because he had no clue on whose side Midpoint's Porsche was fighting. He would have known it in his heart. Yet, here we are. As to Jean, I get the impression that the writers wanted to avoid or at least address unhealthy romance tropes and portray a relationship that can be sexy but wholesome at the same time. And they accomplished it in one hacking scene. But do you know what Nupsip did the morning after he was green flaggy enough to not take advantage of a desperate and intoxicated Jean? He lets Jean believe that they did make out and relishes in his panic and shame. And it is played for laughs, sound effects and all. Talking about the text undermining the message. So I do think that they did have some sort of specific empowering romantic message in their heads they wanted to convey, but they just utterly failed. But specific message or not, when one requirement for a romance is that it deals in one way or another with the transforming power of love and partnership as an instrument for growth and positive change, do these two stories even qualify as a romance? For real, I mean, none of the leads was changed by love even one bit. I mean, when you look at it closer, none of them has gained anything by having found love. They might have achieved their goals, like Jean has his book and Kinn knows now who wanted to kill him. But in what way has love given them the tools to finally beat their antagonist? Nupsip has certainly given Jean plenty of ludicrous stuff to write about, but he did not inspire Bois to stop pressuring for NC scenes and certainly has not given Jean the balls to face her. And Porsche? Be real, he has always been a liability more than anything else. In fact, I would argue that their love has no bearings on the overall plot and the big what happened to Porsche's mom showdown whatsoever. I mean, look at it. Their having gained trust, them having the other on their side, has not given them the power to make better decisions. Not even heads up in terms of knowledge, nor does it shape their reactions in any way. In fact, they're barely doing anything in the climax. Kinn literally says 2 lines. They are utterly inactive, nothing to decide for either one of them. They're basically standing by to listen, having become extras in their own show, outshone in the end by a couple that still has a meaningful conflict to grapple with and decisions left to make. So, we end up with 2 love stories in which love has literally changed jack shit for the affected and whose wholesomeness and epicness as a couple was shredded to bits in a desperate attempt to squeeze at least some conflict out of them until the plot wrapped itself up. Well, guess which show did not fall into that trap? Now that we have established what sources of antagonism are present in a romance and examined in detail how KinnPorsche and Lovely Writer failed at all 3 of them and thus ruined the main couple's relationship beyond repair, let's look at how it can be done right. Again, the inability to create and sustain the different conflicts is one of the main reasons a lot of BL romances fail. And it is a challenging task in general, but in a romance, it is especially hard because there are so many different types of antagonists, human and non-human ones. How do you raise all of these different conflicts that are so diverse in their fighting ground and their approach and have them all blow up at the same time? Let me now show you how Trapped achieved exactly that by implementing, you guessed it, yet another source of conflict. One that is so powerful that it can bind all conflicts in your stories together into one, allowing you not only to keep the established antagonists busy and relevant even after the main leads become a couple, but also slay them all in one big satisfying strike when it's time for the climax. So, what is an inner antagonist? Well, it is, as the name says, an opponent, so it keeps the heroine from getting what she wants. But it has no physical form. It resides within, like an addiction, a trait, trauma, or false belief. Now, what are the advantages of having an inner antagonist? First of all, it can serve as a way to characterize your lead, set them apart from others who do not have that problem. And since the problem is innate and thus constantly present, when you know your character's inner antagonist, as a writer, you will kind of always know how she will react to different things and challenges.
What's wrong, McFly? Chicken?
It also makes for a character that can be wonderfully, systematically dynamic. When you decide to have the inner antagonist of your protagonist challenged in your story, she can oscillate between the person she was when the inner antagonist is strong and changed in moments the antagonist has lost its grip on her. And these are only the general dramatic superpowers an inner antagonist has. For a romance, it's gold. First, if one of your main leads carries an inner antagonist, it can basically allow you to have them keep on fighting without compromising their relationship. Because they fight the inner antagonist, not each other, technically. So the lover has something to do that is not backstabbing. I will show you in a minute. But also, love gets something to do. You know, the other non-human antagonist we have in a love story? Love already is an inner antagonist herself. What better way of keeping her relevant even after the lovers are together than presenting her with an enemy in her own playing field? But for that, you need a romantic question that goes beyond will they, won't they? And Trapped has one, and it laid the groundwork very early on. Listen up. We're back in episode 3. Tang Yi has just refused to give Xiao Fei the lighter. We are in the midst of the romance plot's inciting incident. And we get a flashback. It is Tang Yi and his adoptive father, Old Tang. Probably the night before the shooting in which Old Tang and Xiao Fei's mentor will end up dead. He explains why he wants to legitimize the business. Their workers should be able to lead a normal life. And he asks Tang Yi to finish the task should something happen to him, offering him the lighter as a symbol of his trust. Tang Yi is not sold, he says. But Old Tang replies, a normal life is where happiness lies. And he adds, there are already too many people in his past who had to give up their chance on having a normal life due to him choosing a life of crime. Giving all the others a chance to have one now is the least he can do. Tang Yi still resists, getting snarky. Is Old Tang talking like this because he has gone soft or irrational due to love? Then Old Tang says this. One day, there will be a person that lets you understand the feeling of a normal life. Tang Yi accepts, promising to fulfill Old Tang's wish of legitimizing the gang, even if it means his own death. But again, Old Tang stops him in his tracks and says, no task is important enough to risk his life for. Should Tang Yi ever have to decide between his promise and life, he should choose life. Now, what is the romantic dramatic question that this is supposed to plant in our heads? We just need to look at our hero scoffing at the prospect of a normal life as something boring and weak, and mocking Old Tang for being sentimental and soft. His eagerness to pledge his life as if it were nothing. Will love, as Old Tang predicted, teach Tang Yi the value of a normal life and say goodbye to his life as a mafioso and a criminal? Okay, but why is this even a question? What made Tang Yi reject the value of a normal life in the first place, and why does he not embrace a normal life first chance he gets, as Old Tang wanted him to? What makes him resist? So much so that it takes a whole ass show until the romantic, dramatic question gets answered. There is something holding him back, something within him that fights fangs and claws to keep him on the path of crime, darkness, and death. Working subtly but steadily from the moment we see Tang Yi on screen. Always in the wings, showing itself fully in only one crucial moment. Let me show you this very moment when for me it appears in all its power. Tang Yi's inner antagonist. So, let us recap. Since Old Tang's death, Tang Yi is working on fulfilling his promise to finalize the family going legitimate. And for these past 4 years, while doing it, one obsessive, nosy cop must have been a pain in the butt. Tang Yi gets framed for murder and gets intel about who it might be who wants him out of the way. Meanwhile, the police finds out that Tang Yi is an alibi and zeroes in on another person of interest, a guy named Chen Wenhao. He used to be a friend of Old Tang's who went to prison for 24 years. 4 years ago, he was released but suddenly fled the country. Now he is back. And it is not only Tang Yi who wonders if his running away might be connected to the shooting that ended Old Tang's life and that of Xiao Fei's mentor. On the lookout for Chen Wenhao, the two bump into each other. They get kidnapped by his henchmen, but are able to work as a team and escape. In episode 6, a tip brings the police and Tang Yi together again in an attempt to catch Chen Wenhao, but again, he is a no-show. Until out on a run, Tang Yi is getting ambushed. Xiao Fei finally has a justification to move in as Tang Yi's police protection. For 2 episodes, our Betty lays low. When Tang Yi sends Xiao Fei out to keep his sister company, Xiao Fei is almost killed. While Xiao Fei is unconscious, Tang Yi gets a hold of the shooter and now has not only to avenge the death of Old Tang, but also the attack on his sister and Xiao Fei. So when Chen Wenhao's minions grab him after he leaves the hospital to see Xiao Fei, he is more than ready to finally meet his human opponent in the flesh. During the meeting, Chen Wenhao tells us that he once was very close to Old Tang, and that in fact, he went to jail to protect Old Tang. But soon after, Old Tang betrayed him. He is, however, ready to start afresh. Tang Yi keeps his cool and accepts the truce. Right after, Tang Yi visits a now conscious Xiao Fei, who tells him that a fortune teller once foretold him that he can only be killed by a cannonball. The next day, Tang Yi, still confused about what is happening to him, admits that he likes having someone look out for him since Old Tang has died. Xiao Fei's like, "You like that new life? There is more where that came from. Let me show you." Ready to start immediately. At home, Tang Yi ponders over the charm Xiao Fei has gifted him and Old Tang's lighter. Xiao Fei, not hearing back from Tang Yi, has a moment of panic. Could he have been rejected? It's actually cute. But then it is official. So now we enter the second half. And still, they cannot catch a break. Tang Yi tells Xiao Fei to move out of his house to not get attacked again. But Xiao Fei knows what this is all about. He pleads him to let the police handle Chen Wenhao because otherwise, as a policeman, he would have to arrest Tang Yi. Tang Yi refuses. But still, when Tang Yi is alone and broody on his birthday, Xiao Fei shows up and he makes a promise. Then Chen Wenhao reappears. Xiao Fei is getting stalked and Tang Yi drugged by his assistant. Both escape the attacks in the nick of time. Again, Tang Yi wants to deal with it the mafia way. Xiao Fei again pleads to let the police handle him, and this time, Tang Yi relents. Tang Yi asks his sister to leave the country and then meets Chen Wenhao once more. They exchange a number of threats, thinly but deliciously veiled as compliments, more at odds than ever before. Meanwhile, Xiao Fei, who realized that the music box his mentor gifted him is the same as the one Tang Yi's real mother sent him as a birthday present when he was a kid, finds out that his mentor has birthed a child and gave it away for adoption. Xiao Fei has a hunch who this child might be. But before he's able to tell Tang Yi, Wenhao has struck again and kidnapped Tang Yi's adoptive sister. Wenhao tells Tang Yi that he wants revenge, not only for going to prison, but because he thinks Old Tang robbed him of his lover and child. But before he can proceed, yes, As it turns out, Xiaofei's mentor, Tang Yi's mother, never told Chen Wenhao nor Old Tang that the baby was still alive. All to save her son from a life of crime he would have led otherwise. It was by pure happenstance that Tang Yi ended up in Old Tang's care after he fled his adoptive family. For Tang Yi, this changes nothing. He still wants revenge for the death of Old Tang, and was Chen Wenhao, who he had seen bent over the 2 dead bodies 4 years ago, and it was definitely him who shot Tang Yi. But Chen Wenhao is stunned. He does not care about revenge anymore and confesses. Yes, he shot Tang Yi and was planning on killing his former friend, but someone had been faster than him. Tang Yi is still full of rage, and Xiaofei asks, Tang Yi finally lets go. He speeds home. Xiaofei follows him. He tries to console Tang Yi, who is close to breaking down completely, but Tang Yi rejects him over and over. And then says this. Nothing happened that day. Don't pay attention to me. Tang Yi is so quick to pledge his life for a task, he cannot see the value of a normal life because he does not think he is worthy of one. This is Tang Yi's inner antagonist. He does not feel worthy of love. And when we look at his backstory, how he might have come to that conclusion is not hard to understand. In episode 13, when sharing their first meal as a couple, Tang Yi, to explain what drives his need to avenge Old Tang's murder, describes how he grew up basically all alone, given away for adoption by his birth mother and neglected by an adoptive father who never wanted him and who acted out his grief about his wife's death, Tang Yi's adoptive mother, on the only one who was around. He never knew what a normal life was like, what being loved and cherished was like. His life would be worth nothing to him because no one around him valued it. And can you see how that makes Tang Yi the perfect hero in a romance? A story about the transformational power of love, in which love is herself an agent. It is her job to challenge that inner antagonist. It is her battle. And Old Tang made that challenge text for us. And a battle, a challenge, it is. And you can see this in how long it takes Old Tang to gain the trust of the little runaway he stumbled upon by accident and took home. While the other stray we now know is Tang Yi's adoptive sister is already well fed and bathed, sleeping happily upstairs, Tang Yi, or shall we say, his inner antagonist, resists. All these little hallmarks of a normal life, eating together, celebrating one's birthday together, cooking for the ones you care about and looking after them, he does not know this. He does not trust this. Why would anyone do this to him? And it is only Old Tang's patience that is able to silence the voice in Tang Yi's head that says, that is not for you. You do not deserve this. You are not worthy of attention and care. He's able to challenge Tang Yi's inner antagonist for the first time as an agent of love. He picks up the battle out of love for Tang Yi. And may I just gush about the fact that this is not only a flashback for us, the viewer, but that it is Tang Yi telling this to his lover, like people do in a relationship. And you know why he can? Yeah, because this shit is so well set up and the characters are so rich that we don't need a fucking misunderstanding to drive the plot or someone who just cannot open up his mouth. We can have 2 committed adults doing healthy and adulty stuff and still have conflict. It is possible. But as we see, the battle is not over. Love has not won yet. When Old Tang states a normal life is his main motivation to go legitimate, Tang Yi still doesn't get it. And when he does acquiesce to fulfill Old Tang's vision in case he's not able to, there it is. His inner antagonist is alive and well. And Old Tang kinda knows he has not succeeded yet. His romantic thesis, it almost reads like a hope, a wish, as if he knew he wouldn't get the chance to get this job done. And now imagine being that young man, guided, persuaded by this inner voice that has only been somewhat muted by the love of a surrogate father, and now losing this person. Not only that, witnessing him get killed under your watch, that inner voice would from now on scream in full force. And yes, now 4 years later, when we meet him in episode 1, he has not prioritized life over duty at all. The opposite. He has practically given up his life, clinging to what the voice in himself told him is his only value, the promise he made. In fact, there is almost nothing left of the young man he was before. He's basically cosplaying the man he wasn't able to save, or rather what he thinks, guided by self-hatred, guilt, and a subsequent wish to self-sacrifice, the leader of a gang should be like. Lonely, calculating, and aloof. Like, he goes everywhere alone. He doesn't even bring a bodyguard to meet his nemesis. The moment the legitimization is a done deal, this guy is ready to cross the rainbow bridge. And so it is no wonder why we start the story where we started. It is the moment when Mang Xiaofei is ready to pick up the task that Old Tang had to leave unfinished. The task to bring love into Tang Yi's life. A love that is strong and patient and enough to challenge Tang Yi's inner antagonist. And defeat it once and for all. And it is so well crafted, like all his challenges, they're really an echo of the message that Old Tang wanted to get across, but couldn't. Not fully, that is. The message that, yes, you are worthy of attention, of care, and of someone by your side to eat with you and to spend your birthday with you. Because no matter what happened to you at the beginning of this life, you are precious. That you exist is a miracle worth to be celebrated. And it is that message that brings Tang Yi to surrender at midpoint. Even after their public commitment, Tang Yi snaps back into teasing and being aloof. He's like, oh, I don't know if I'm cut out for a relationship. It is no coincidence that it is seeing Xiaofei's wound that unarms him and literally brings him to his knees in disbelief and gratitude, and his inner antagonist to shut up, because it was an act of love that tells him, it's not your destiny to self-sacrifice for a normal life of love and peace for all the others. Your life, your happiness is worth so much more. It's worth being protected. So whenever Xiaofei says, let the police do it, no murdering please, he's not being boring or a buzzkill. He is doing love's job, Old Tang's job. And this is where I circle back to what I told you, he is not fighting Tang Yi. He's fighting Tang Yi's inner voice. And he might be annoying and at times kill the mood, but he is not attacking Tang Yi himself. Not devaluing him. He wants to save him, and Tang Yi knows it. They never have to break up. They do not have to betray each other. Heck, when Xiaofei tells him that he went to see his adoptive father behind his back, Tang Yi's angry, but when Xiaofei says, trust me, he does. Show me one other BL couple that has that kind of trust. But remember how I told you that giving your hero an inner conflict can streamline or connect all the conflicts? Chen Wenhao? He's not only there to enforce proximity, he is part of old Tang's and Xiao Fei's battle to make Tang Yi learn the value of a life away from crime and murder. When Xiao Fei drags Tang Yi to the path of self-love and domesticity and trust, his showing up feeds Tang Yi's inner antagonist. He is a man who gave up the pursuit of love and happiness. Just like Tang Yi, he is ready to sacrifice his life and that of others for revenge. And it is a tug of war. Like, around midpoint, we have one scene of Tang Yi valuing life, and in the next one, he's in a room with Chen Wenhao and accepts possible death by poisoning without even flinching. It is these two paths that Tang Yi is contemplating at midpoint. Past, duty, pain and revenge, the way of the mafia, and the way of the law, of future, love, and a normal life. And so it is no coincidence that it is the moment when both players representing these two contradictory paths come together for the first time. He is ripped apart. So much so that all his self-hatred finally comes out unfiltered. The inner antagonist finally revealed. And because of that, nothing is won or settled afterwards. He might accept to be held and he apologizes to his lover, but the pain that feeds his need for revenge and drags him to the dark side has not subsided. Xiao Fei might have helped him through this crisis, but for now, the inner antagonist might be even stronger than ever. His goal is unchanged, and now he doesn't even know who to hate, and the man whose death was supposed to bring him peace is his father? I mean... But even he is still not out of business, just like Xiao Fei. When Chen Wenhao stumbles upon the real shooter, a cop working in Xiao Fei's precinct that had to silence Xiao Fei's mentor when she found out that he helped the mafia, he captures him. And he, representing the way of the mafia, the path of past and pain, does of course not let the cops handle it. He hands him over to his son. And see how gloriously the inner conflict is working? It doesn't even matter that we have barely seen this man before. Like, remember? It's Ken! No. You have seen him. Remember Tom's sister? Yeah, me neither. The real conflict is within. He just fans the inner antagonist's flame. And Tang Yi finally bursts. And when that happens, who you gonna call? Yes, still on love duty. So we get the confirmation, random guy, it was him. I mean, what stops Tang Yi now? Yes, Xiao Fei. But it was never the words that truly made a difference to Tang Yi. He needs a plain example. He shoves Xiao Fei away, raises his gun. Before we go into themes, can we first acknowledge how the stakes were being raised here? Gustav, you will love that. Going from not being able to get someone you love shot to kind of being responsible for someone you love getting shot by someone else to shooting someone you love yourself? Magnificent. But not only that. We finally do get an answer to a romantic, dramatic question close to the climactic moment. Yes, he has finally learned it. He has not gone the way of the mafia, killed old Tang's murderer and fled. He has given the guy and himself to police. And he's ready to face the consequences. He has chosen, finally, a normal life. And he might not have fully embraced that he deserves a normal life yet. I mean, his friend said it.
你现在的样子比里头受伤的家伙还要糟糕哎。
Tang Yi probably feels even more guilty, worthless, and unlovable than ever. It once more needs Xiao Fei to dispel the self-hatred that welled up again. To tell him, you are loved. Your life is so valuable. If not to you, but to me it is. And if this is not over, fine, I can keep going. I'm going to stand in the way of every bullet that you will fire in your life. Because I value it. I will not have you throw it away. I want you to have your life, your freedom, and spend it with you. And only then he can surrender. Except that they still might be together. And I've heard a lot of people complain that they do not want him to go to prison because it's not a happy ending. And to that I say, no. First, this is a show whose symbol for life is a skeleton. That our hero was finally free by going into a prison. I mean, and yes, this is not a cheery ending. Heck, Tang Yi, before he enters the prison door, he looks more scared than anything. But isn't that how defeating an inner antagonist can look like? Would look like? There is just not one big strike in life, and then everything's fine. All the things within us that keep us from becoming better at being good to ourselves and others, they usually cannot be slain. And they tend to linger. They might even never be overcome for good. And being loved, it just doesn't make you automatically love yourself and make you overcome all of your flaws, the pain inside. At best, it can give you that little push to at least try. And that was all the narrative asked for. Tang Yi has learned the worth of a normal life. And yes, would I have preferred that Tang Yi's act of swearing off the mafia path had not happened off screen? And is Xiaofei surfing a little too close to manic pixie dream boy territory? He has his mentor, but that soon loses priority in the face of Tang Yi's inner battle. From this episode on, he's practically a human shield. But you know what? I don't mind. Tang Yi deserves it. Because we all deserve to be loved with patience and perseverance, and have someone to tell us, you are loved. I will defend you. I'm so glad that you're alive. All of us. But especially someone who has never heard it as a child, like Tang Yi. And for a pain as big as Tang Yi's, and for a hero as big as he is, and so close to being a tragic one, maybe it needs the strongest vessel of love you can get. Sometimes it just needs, when a man is ready to throw away his life out of pain by succumbing to murder, a man that can only be killed by a cannonball to save him. Wait, what? You still think that KinnPorsche and Lovely Writer were the best version of themselves? And that an inner conflict would not have made their love story more epic and wholesome?
Challenge accepted.
So before we start, a disclaimer. You think that I crapped on KinnPorsche and Lovely Writer? Yeah, I will crap on these shows a little more. However, I want you to know that my criticism is in no way directed at the actors or any other person that has worked on the programs. For all I can see, they all did an amazing job. They gave their all. No, my beef is exclusively with the writing. I have pondered over a story that will not come together for months on end. I know, writing something bad is hard enough. A story where all the parts fit? I don't know how anyone does this. However, I also love me a good rant because very often it comes from a place of love for the craft and mourning all that could have been.
Did anybody proofread this?
Heck, was it necessary to include KinnPorsche and Lovely Writer into a video about Trapped? No. But these two shows had so much going for them, so many great ideas and setting that just needed a little bit more focus and depth. And these are the things that I will build upon. Yet, the things that I loved and thought of as the core strengths might not be the ones you loved. So there will be a strong personal bias here. And it has to be said, obviously a cultural one as well. There are cultures in which a decision between individual happiness and responsibility towards authorities is still kind of expected to favor the benefit of the group. Love stories in other countries are bound to have other characteristics and goals than the ones Murnau found in his Hollywood rom-coms he researched. So take all of that with a grain of salt. But this is not supposed to be a historical or narratological analysis, rather a fun little thought experiment. Flex of the old writing muscle. And an invitation. So please, debate any of my arguments, prove me wrong, and if I'm not, but you still think that you have an even better idea, I would love to hear about it. So, as I said, I loved the midpoint. We had character revealing moments, bonding, and meaningful decisions they would not have been able to make in the beginning of the narrative. Transformed by love. Beautiful. This will be the anchor point. So, for a rewrite of the first half, one main question is, why? The other, and that is the one that will directly inform the emotional oomph of a midpoint's decision, is, what do they give up by this decision? What is at stake? And one major problem in the script is, we never really know. Because the world building sucks. Are there any rules to this world? Like, who is in charge? In the beginning, Kim was just mildly scolded by Dad for killing people needlessly, meaning he can make his own decisions. Yet later, Kin is like, my dad made me do it. Why was he not mad that Dad hid his aunt away and lied to him his whole life? What will happen if he crosses him? We have no idea. And the same goes for the whole mafia thing. Minutes before the climax, there is suddenly a council we never heard of. Is Kin in trouble? Oh, never mind. And this issue also pertains to Porsche. What even is the default relationship between a bodyguard and a mobster? When Porsche arrives, he is courted like a king, with direct access to the top. And everybody fights over who is allowed to have him. Like he was a pet of a special breed. Yet, Kin threatens him with, your life is mine now? The notion that Vegas treats his bodyguards better than Kin is ludicrous when Porsche can basically roam around however he likes. I mean, are the bodyguards allowed to just leave? Pete does. And Kin just resigns too. Why does Porsche not steal some money and then run with his brother? What can get you killed? What are the effing rules? There is a principle attributed to Alfred Hitchcock that basically says, when you want tension in your story, you do not want some bomb to suddenly explode. Instead, you want the audience to know that there is a bomb under the table that can blow up at any moment. I'd like to know if my hero is in danger. In fact, for an epic story, I'd like my hero to be in danger, period. Kin and Porsche are way too powerful as of now, and their mistakes too inconsequential. I mean, no one effing dies in this world. So, we need rules that define and raise the stakes inasmuch that midpoint's letting go and returning does not only mean giving up a potential lay, but possibly your own life. So let's go with what Kin said. Your life is mine now. Let's say for a bodyguard, you may enter the staff like a king, but you will never leave except in a coffin. Let's go all in and have them be virtual slaves. See how giving up his freedom to save Kin's life is even more meaningful now? And as to Kin, please, let's strip him of some of his power. He has to stick to rules too. Letting Porsche go might cost him his life. And since this is a love story, let us also implement a rule That could explain in part why it took them so long until midpoint to commit to one another, and allows us to have conflict after them becoming a couple. Bonding can be lethal. And to make this a tangible threat and the relationship between Kinn and his dad clearer, Korn will be an antagonist from the get-go. And this time, not only the audience knows this, but Kinn as well. Dad holds the power. Kinn might be his right hand, but Dad can strip all power from him if he breaks the rules. Kinn is now isolated in his family, from his employees, and as to the normies, let's just roll with what he told Porsche. He never knows if he's loved for who he is as a person or for whose son he is. And while we're at it, may I also raise the stakes for the whole family? They're way too comfortable on their throne. Again, let's go with the idea of a council of oligarchs that run the city. But let's say the amount of veto comes with the amount of money they make. Kinn's family is the richest and thus most powerful right now, but this can change easily. And it is Kinn's task to ensure that they stay on top. So much pressure. Now, at the isolation, and you have a hero that is barely surviving from the get-go. Delicious. So why would Porsche at the start have a hard time giving up his freedom for Kinn? The show explains it with his personality. He loves fun and he hates authority, and that's fine. However, personality is something fixed, and we want him to grow. So I think it is more helpful to present his defiance as a character flaw he learns to overcome. And to have him so deeply flawed and still sympathetic, it is helpful to present a reason for this flaw and why he cannot stop self-sabotaging. Because I have a whole list of reasons why I hate Porsche as a character. But never have I hated him more than in the 2nd to 4th episode. I wanted to punch him in the face. Sweetie, constantly disrespecting the place you work in and needlessly aggravating your colleagues and pranking your employer while being lazy and moany yourself and still taking the coin and enjoying all the perks is not endearing, especially when the future of your brother is at stake if you fail. I hate authority. But in this case, I sided with authority. What a dick. So, let's give him a reason for his defiance. One everyone can get behind. Porsche hates the rich. Why? Yeah, I always thought that mom was pretty underused. So how about Porsche hates the rich? Because when he saw mom getting killed, the guy looked rich, but still wanted something valuable from her, and shot her when she refused to give it to him. How could a scene look like that characterizes them, shows their goals, and lays out why they might resist falling in love with the other? How about Porsche works at a posh bar? A job that he hates. And Kinn, by pure happenstance, shows up as a customer one night. He has snuck away from his barrio, trying his luck on a lady, pretending to be poor. But the person rejects him. Kinn is visibly puzzled, and Porsche, witnessing all of this, he knows his loudmouth has brought him into trouble a few times too many. Yet, after a whole night of being treated like dirt by his boss and his posh customers, he blurts out, "You are a bad impersonator, man. Your fake identity sucks." And he adds, "When a filthy rich man tries to lure a girl away to do a trick, pretending to be someone he is not, he must have something sinister in mind." And the person saw right through that. Filthy rich? Kin looks at the cheap clothes he put on as a disguise, but Porsche can only roll his eyes and dishes out all the signs of being filthy rich that gave Kin away. Kin is impressed, and he strangely enjoys being demasked and talking to someone that is not afraid of him. He replies, "Well, sometimes even a rich man might have a genuine reason to get rid of his name and his riches, and that a name can sometimes be a weight too much to carry." Porsche scoffs. He wished that his name could carry enough weight to keep the owner of the bar from firing him the moment he breaks the next glass. Before Kin can say anything, Porsche leaves for the back alley to have a smoke with a co-worker. Kin heads home when suddenly goons appear. He flees into the back alley, unprotected, and thugs shoot. And to keep his colleague from getting killed by the frivolities of the rich, Porsche uses stuff lying around to defend them and Kin. And he is good. Kin's bodyguards show up, the goons flee, but now Porsche knows who Kin really is. His real name. Kin leaves, Porsche stays back. Yet, this time, no matter what he tells his boss for all the chaos and destruction, he gets fired yet again. To make ends meet, the next day he pesters all his past employers for a job. But they all don't want him because... Meanwhile, Korn is furious that Kin left on his own and prohibits any further solo trips. But the bodyguards tell Korn about Porsche's skills. They seek him out on Korn's behalf, but Porsche declines. Serving the rich drinks is one thing, but risking his life for them so they just can make even more money? However, when he comes home, an evil social worker tells him if by the end of the month Porsche cannot pay rent, his brother ends up in foster care. Porsche has to bite the bullet. But unlike OG Porsche, no matter how much he hates the mafia, he lays low. He has a plan. He will steal money and leave town with his brother when the time is right. And Kin? He sees how much Porsche struggles and tries to connect. But Porsche will not endanger his plan and tells him that they cannot be friends when they are not equals. But then they go on their first mission together. A man gets killed who embezzled Korn's money, and he almost shoots Porsche dead. When Kin comes to tend to his wound, sensing his terror, he tells him what his father always told him and what Kin tells himself to keep going. A betrayal must be sanctioned, because if the rules are not enforced, the system breaks down and innocents die aplenty. But Porsche just gives him the silent treatment, and Kin leaves. Porsche has made his decision. The same night, he steals money and a car. But just as he makes his secret exit to get his brother, Kin gets attacked. Porsche has no choice. He picks him up to save him, but the two are getting caught eventually and brought out of town. Yet, the van has an accident. They fall into a ravine and flee into the hinterland. As Porsche is poor and probably more street smart than Kin, he takes the lead. Yet, soon they realize they are in enemy territory. They cannot just wander back home. To keep them safe, Porsche decides to bring Kin to a place he knows well. Him and no one else. So this is the moment that I will take a big leap away from the original. But hear me out. Throughout the midpoint episode, I was constantly wondering, where were they going? What was the plan? Plus, did you notice that the whole time Kinn shows unknown parts of himself, but Porsche doesn't? In fact, we only know one thing about him. The bar by the beach. So, to give them a goal and flesh out Porsche and his past a little more, let's make this place their goal. Plus, I thought it was mandatory in Thai BL to have at least one episode set at the beach, so yeah, damn it, we're going to the beach. Specifically, the place he visited with his mom every year when he was a child. And where he wanted to hide with his brother. And a spot no one knows about. And we can have the two snuggling together in their bus seats to hide from the baddies on their way there, and Kinn trying to be better at playing a Kinn with no last name with some locals and failing again, and Porsche teaching him to do slumming right. They arrive at night. But still, Porsche does not enter the beach house. Instead, he takes Kinn to an abandoned beach bar he always dreamt to rebuild and make his own. It's a rack. And Kinn asks why. Why do we not go inside the house? And Porsche lets his guard down. He might be too afraid of the memories of his mom. He has not been there since her death. Yeah, let him tell Kinn what he has seen. Let him tell how helpless he felt not being able to save his mom, and how he struggled to keep his brother safe since then. But Porsche is proud. He tells Kinn that he surely does not know anything about surviving from paycheck to paycheck and being all alone. And this is when Kinn now can finally share his loneliness, the burden of being the brother who has to lead the business. A prospect that made one of his brothers go crazy and the other one betray his father so that he was abandoned, stripped from his name, and left unprotected. And let him tell Porsche that he himself is conflicted about the reign of the mafia, and that he knows that the poor suffer under it, but that there are enemies right now that might cause riots that will devastate everyone. And let him tell Porsche that this is what he did the first day that they met. That he tried to be seen and fancied and kissed and touched, not for his name, money, or who his father was, but for himself. It was an illusion, he says now. There is no running away from that. He is trapped. He cannot flee. But Porsche can, Kinn says. He can make his dream come true. And he adds that he knows a guy close by he can contact. Porsche would just need to bring him there. And Kinn would tell everyone that Porsche died in the woods, protecting him. And Porsche would be free. And Porsche, for the first time, he understands Kinn. The isolation and the burden, not the same as his own, but heavy nonetheless. The burden that he carried when they first met. And he feels like a dick. He says, "Can we try again?" And he pretends to make Kinn a drink like he did that day. But now, this time, when the imaginary Lay rejects Kinn and Kinn asks what he did wrong, Porsche says, that girl was an idiot. Because she only saw Kinn's riches, but not the good heart underneath. However, that it takes a very sophisticated person to see that. "What is your name?" Porsche asks. "Kinn," says Kinn. And then he makes up another bad backstory and they both laugh. And Porsche's like, "You're still so bad at making up a lie about yourself? you should stop forever. And then Kin says, I can't. Because the truth is even more pathetic. Because the truth is, I am lonely. And the one I like, he does not want me. Because we're not equals. And he's right. He was an idiot, says Porsche. And they enter the house and spend the night together. Together as equals, both on the run, both without a future. But the future comes soon enough. When Porsche wakes up, he takes the little treasure Mom told him to seek out when things got rough. They go to Kin's contact. Porsche is uneasy. Kin sends him away, but Porsche stays. Then they see the guy is dead and they're being ambushed. Kin takes a hit. But then they hear Kin's people coming and he says, bleeding, leave, now, leave me be, I will be fine. And Porsche knows Kin might survive, but he will still be alone in a world where one false step means death. And he cannot do it. He cannot leave him behind. And Porsche tells himself he will find a way out for both of them. And what better way to do this than from the inside out? So, midpoint is over, like in the show, they're both back. How can we put our two lovers through the ringer and still keep them a wholesome and epic couple? I think that now's the time to rip the most valuable page out of Trapp's playbook and have a special type of opponent to come and draw his sword. Yeah, remember Tawan? No. He will remain dead. Because dead, he is even better in creating a wound that can be attacked by all antagonists and fits with the world's obsession with punishing betrayal and Porsche as the romantic antagonist. For that, we do not even need to change OG Tawan that much. They were lovers, and he is similar to Porsche. Poorer than Kin, not a mafioso. This time, Dad finds out and will use it to gain even more control over his son. He tricks Tawan into betraying Kin. To now enforce the code, Kin would need to kill him. He knows his dad and that Tawan and him are mere chess pieces to him. But the rules are the rules. Kin is not able to do it. A henchman pulls the trigger in the end. But either way, it was Kin's love that sealed Tawan's fate. That was one reason to not approach Porsche before midpoint. And at midpoint, Kin thought Porsche would leave, so no need to spook him out. And Porsche? Well, that practically writes itself. A young man, unable to save his mom, unable to provide for his brother because he cannot keep a job due to his pride and defiance. The rich are responsible for a lot of pain in the world. But deep down, Porsche knows. The fact that his brother is in danger now is because of Porsche's own making. And that would explain why it took for Kin to be completely stripped of any power and riches to make Porsche even think about approaching him. And when we talk saving the couple from second half hell, we need to talk external non-romantic antagonists as well. So, in the first half, we only needed someone to attack Kin during exposition at midpoint to get Porsche fired and the beach happen. For that, we only need a party that seems more gruesome in their methods than the powers that be. But still, only a variation on them, like a gang from abroad led by rich families like Kin's one, who just want a piece of the profit, a seat at council table. For the second half, however, following Trapped's example, we need someone to make them talk theme instead of nonsense or backstab the other, by attacking the lovers' respective inner conflict. Well, how about the antagonists bring back the question of social justice? Hear me out. It's perfect. The conflict is already there. They both suffer in the system, but Kinn, due to his upbringing in a strict, rule-based setting, had to make himself believe that his family's authority is what keeps political balance and prevents uncontrollable chaos. Porsche, on the other hand, hates authority and the rich and powerful and needs to make them responsible for his shortcomings. They are bound to clash over how to proceed with someone who wants to overthrow the council and get the power to the people. Just like a mobster and a cop would clash over how to proceed with a cold-blooded killing cop. Okay, back in Bangkok. Porsche is in love and wants to find a way to free Kinn and himself from Korn. Kinn, on the other hand, who never expected Porsche to come back with him, is terrified. How can he keep Porsche safe from his dad? He keeps his distance and pokes Porsche's wound. Kinn says he does love him, but he does not have the guts to spill the beans about Tawan yet. Meanwhile, Porsche is working on a plan to defang Korn and suddenly gets word that there is a new gang planning on seizing the power. Porsche does not want a bloodbath. Yet, the leader is a foil to him. Young, poor, wanting to overthrow the Mafia Council and give their riches to the working class. Porsche goes to Kinn, trying to convince him to support Vegas' gang to be free of Korn. But Kinn is apprehensive. He is jealous, of course, but he knows his father and his scheming. He says, don't trust him. That makes Porsche defensive. Is it because Vegas does not have a big name and is a street rat, just like Porsche himself? Or because Kinn does not want to flee with him anymore? And Kinn, seeing the man he loves so hurt in his pride, the young boy who had to take too much responsibility way too soon, he tells him all about Tawan. He goes all in. And Porsche, knowing his lover's heart and what his father is capable of, is not appalled, nor does he feel betrayed. He understands. He kisses him and says, all the more reasons for us to get rid of him. So they split up again. Kinn is still suspicious of Vegas and does some sleuthing that convinces him that he might be a sock puppet of Korn's. In the meantime, Porsche meets up with Vegas, who now presents a ticking clock. Let's say there is a rare party or a big event. A one-time chance to enter the premises and take over the council. But they need money to bribe the people who can smuggle them in. Porsche rushes back to get his mom's treasure. Kinn arrives and sees him. The ring makes him pause, but he just has not enough pieces of the puzzle yet to burst Porsche's bubble. And his man is just so elated by the thought of the revolution to come. Kinn wishes he was wrong. Please wait, he says. As expected, Porsche is disappointed, yet he swallows his pride. He knows why his lover is so distrustful, and he was ready to risk his life for him to flee at midpoint. I too want us to be free. As equals. Kinn reassures him. Give me 2 more hours, and if I don't come up with anything, I will fight next to you, no matter if I trust him, as long as you do. And this is what Porsche wanted to hear. He says, I'll see what I can do. They kiss and go their separate ways. So, Porsche goes to Vegas. He gives him his mother's treasure and buys them the time Kinn asked for. Vegas gives the money and the ring to their contact. Kinn, on the other hand, having seen the ring, now knows that Porsche's mom is the key to all of this and goes to Porsche's house. He gets what he needed to understand his father's plot, rushes to the council building to stop the coup. He only has a few minutes left, but then, guess who's not dead? Just kidding. A random minion of his dad. But Kinn, just as Porsche did in the alleyway the night that they met, outwits the goons, runs, but he arrives too late. He enters the throne room, sees Porsche in front of the council, sentenced to death for his betrayal. Vegas already killed by Korn. Of no use anymore after having done his duty, luring Porsche into betrayal. Played the same way Tawan had been. Dad turns around and he is surprised to see his son here. They look into each other's eyes and they know that the other knows everything. But what they don't know is, how far is the other one ready to go? What is he ready to risk? Kinn stops the council. He hands over the evidence that shows that it was Vegas who planned the coup, and he makes up a story that Porsche never wanted mutiny, but was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. And that is all Kinn wants to disclose for now. But then his father makes a move. He says, "Then, who paid Vegas the money?" And Kinn says, "Me. I planned the coup." Korn asks, "And why would Porsche be here?" And this is when Porsche realizes what is coming, and he fights and wails in the grip that holds him. Because he remembers what Kinn told him about his older brother, and what happened to him when he betrayed the council. Stripped from his name, and all the money, security, and power. Free to be killed, a price on his head. He wanted to stop me going through with it, says Kinn. Yet, he does not flinch. He's free to go now, isn't he? He says. You are, Kinn's dad replies, knowing what his son is planning. Fleeing with the man he loves. Not under my watch, Korn thinks. He would rather give up the power that he had wanted to seize with all this plotting, just to have Kinn suffer. Korn pulls the ring Porsche's mom hid away so well that it took a mock coup to finally get it. Because there had once been another family with claim to land and power in the city. Yet, the only heiress fled, but she had 2 sons. So until they would return with the ring to prove their birthright, a region had to manage their businesses. Anxiously scheming to find their sons and kill them to stay in power of their claim. And Korn could have kept the ring to himself and never tell Porsche about his right. But knowing Kinn to be free and enjoying his exile with Porsche, he rather drives Kinn away and takes control of the scoundrel now, so that no one would be able to take his power away. He did not see that coming, son, Korn thinks. And Kinn could have told the council that this was the last heir. Korn smiles. Yet, he didn't. Seems like that was a fate he wanted to spare the young man. And now, they already take his money, his watch, and his papers. And he still does not flinch. You stay put, he says. You'll be fine. I promised you. What a shame, Korn thinks. His son? He was bright after all. He knows what's up. Porsche does not. Korn lets them bring her. Korn's adoptive sister. The guy who was sent to have her produce the ring and kill her sons, he smacked her so bad. Not a word ever came out of her since. Not even now that her son falls to his knees in front of her. Nowhere to go for him now. And Korn turns to him and says, We have a lot to do. now that you've finally returned to where you belong. But don't worry, Korn smiles. I will teach you all you need to know, my son. Okay, guys, I know this must seem like a giant cop-out, but to my defense, didn't the show also heavily tease a second season? I mean, how can you even call this an ending without giving Porsche his bar by the beach? So I thought doing the same would make for a fairer comparison. I don't know. Maybe not. But please share in the comments how you think the story could be tied up in one season, or if you do want to know what my version of a second season would look like. I'm pretty sure you can already guess who I would put on the throne once Dad is defeated. Or do you? Next. There is a recurring theme during the making of this video. I never knew how good I had it with KinnPorsche until I went back to Lovely Writer. And this applies to the rewrite as well. KinnPorsche knew what it was. A story of a mobster and his bodyguard falling in love with one another. And the decisions at midpoint fit with this dynamic. What is Lovely Writer actually about? Is it the story of a young novelist who, through experiencing love for the first time, overcomes his writer's block? Is it the story of a young writer who, through experiencing love for the first time, comes to terms with his sexuality? Or is it the story of a young recluse who overcomes his fears of relationships through being forced to work on the set of his own BL show? Or is it the story of a young man who mends his broken relationship to his father by falling in love with a man just like his father did? Lovely Writer is all of these stories, but is not able to follow through with either one of them from start to finish. Just look at the individual plot points. The theme presented at midpoint is completely different from what happens in the climax. There is just no narrative through line or red thread. It is all loose ends, and you can pick up any of them, and by really exploring it would get enough material for an entire show. Trust me, I tried. I wanted to go down the wholesomeness route, but I had to change so much about Napsip as a character, I realized I wouldn't know what footage to show you. So now I have a whole outline on my desktop for a show about a young writer who learns what a wholesome and supportive relationship can look like through writing a show about love and falling in love with its lead. A washed-up actor troubled with addiction and money problems who needs this show to succeed to salvage his career. And yeah, we would have to recast old Napsip, but no worries, Cow. There would also be a role for you as older Napsip's evil young foil. Would be totally within your range. So, DHAP or GMM, give me a call. To stay at least somehow close to the original plot points, instead, let's look at Gene finding his voice as a writer to falling in love within the BL context. Because what a stroke of genius. A story that talks about the power of love that takes place during the filming of a romance? A BL one at that? This is so interesting. And it has already so much built-in conflict, especially for a man working in this industry. Not only because romance is generally looked down upon, but because it depicts tenderness and vulnerabilities shown between two men, something that society is not only uncomfortable with, but downright rejects as being unmanly. I mean, this shit writes itself. But man, talking about letting a premise go to complete waste. Seriously, if the show would have dealt with these topics any more superficially, it would have ended up in space. I know, there are videos out there about how brave and progressive the show was in the context it exists in, but I'm sorry. This so-called discussion of issues related to BL and the portrayal of love and romance media was what a wise man once called merely
perfunctory.
It feels like someone just browsed through the hashtag BL is problematic on Twitter for 5 minutes just lifted some of the phrases they found and threw them like brightly colored, pseudo-self-reflective, pseudo-wholesome sprinkles onto their deeply spiteful, heteronormative, psychologically disturbing cake of a narrative. I mean, yeah, it is nice to mention the injustice that actors in the industry face when they out themselves as gay in real life or just differ in their gender expression from what is deemed as masculine. But how about dealing with this highly interesting and tragic topic not in a throwaway line, but in the narrative itself, so we can actually see the grief and pain that this can cause? Instead, we get a show on which the only unapologetically, openly gay, slightly gender non-conforming character is cast as, in the best case, an unredeemable, manipulative, seductive, spiteful, attention-hungry villain, or in the worst case, a self-hating, self-sabotaging, pathetic outcast. The only character that is not given a happy ending. What made you hate Aoi so much? And so, because this is my rewrite, the only realm where I reign supreme, Aoi, sweetie, this time I will get you one. But to be fair, I do have a hunch where the problems in the BL industry are only sporadically spelled out in the show with a wink-wink to the viewer rather than shown. Because when you want to tell a story about the problems in the BL industry, guess who would need to be cast as the antagonist? Yeah, the BL industry. Well, that will surely not go well with the sponsors, but we don't need to care about that. And since we now focus on the production of the show, the main dramatic question of the plot will be, like in any other show that centers on a big project. Will it be a success or will it fail? So, how do we know if it is a failure or a success? Let's say there is an event where all the production companies present their projects in form of a trailer or a teaser to the sponsors. And they then decide which one they will finance to get made, or which ones will never see the light of day because they're not deemed as marketable and do not stick to the unwritten BL rules. And who doesn't love a climactic declaration of love on a public event? So, of course, everyone in our ensemble cast wants the show to be picked up. But instead of them basically turning to the camera and state a random problematic fact about the BL industry, this time they embody it. Let us make Aoi into an actor who, due to his non-stereotypical gender expression and being gay, could never land a main role. This show is his last chance at success. How will he need to change? What will he need to deny about himself to get this show made? And since we are talking stakes, we need to talk about the main problem of the whole setup and the reason why we had to be graced with this god-awful, pointless love triangle between Jean, Nupsip, and Aoi. Jean had no business being on set. Imagine that in Star Wars, rebels fight against the evil empire and Luke shows up at their meetings, but what he really wants is to join the academy and a mean desk person does not let him in. Yeah, sounds terrific. Jean's whole story, his goals, his antagonists are completely disconnected from everyone else's. He has no skin in the game. So, to bind him to the rest of the characters, we will need to make a major change. Jean needs to write the show. And this is where we run right into another reason why the show was so lackluster and said nothing. How in the world can you write a story about a writer, decide to have 3 of his works present, and not engage with any of them? And don't get me wrong here, you don't need to spell out what the stories are about specifically, but publishing magical mystery is literally introduced as the main objective, and the new BL as a pesky chore. Why introduce two genres and then don't even bother telling me why he does want to change genres and why he even ended up writing BL in the first place? This is like putting Doc Hollywood or Lightning McQueen in their one-horse town at the end of the world without ever mentioning the place they were meant to go. They yearned to be until they fell in love with this new place and a new life. Magical mystery and bad engineer in this story are literally only 2 words on a piece of paper. In a show that wants to deal with the problems in the BL industry, a young man exploring his sexuality and finding his voice as a writer? Why? So, since Lovely Writer obviously refused to pick an angle for their social commentary, I guess we have to make the decision ourselves. I have always been fascinated with the different ways you can look at the genre, either as nothing more than a trashy self-indulgence, fetishization, escapism, a retreading of stereotypical romance just with the breasts filed off, or through the lens of liberation. It is subversive, it is transgressive, and with it now being a growing market, it can have the ability to challenge norms and represent people that have not had a seat at the table yet. And since the show's tone is rather optimistic and romance is meant to be a reassurance about the transformative power of love, let this be our thesis. When done with care, BL isn't a mere self-indulgence and fetishization, but can represent, encourage change, and challenge societal norms. And just like everyone constantly pulled Tang Yi to join the side of justice in a normal life, or go down the dark path of revenge with them, the narrative must represent BL to Jean as both. And Jean's decision in the end must depend on which view he has embraced. For this to feel organic, it is often useful to make the protagonist come into the discussion as an outsider, just like the viewer. And this is where the second major change to Jean's character lies. He needs to be a fish out of water. He has not yet written BL before. He is thrown against his will into the world of the BL industry. And as he falls in love with the genre and the people, so does the viewer. So this will be how we meet new Jean. Then, the mailman. He has 2 bad news for Jean. Another rejection for the first draft of Magic Mystery. And secondly, a raise of his rent. Jean needs money soon, and luck is on his side. He runs into a literary agent who heard him reading some years ago. They meet in her office, and she says, "I will try to find you a publisher, but I need a favor." A writer of hers is just in the midst of producing a promotional trailer of a show for one of their BL novels. Unfortunately, the last scriptwriter has quit. A writer is needed to help transfer the lines from the novel to the script and oversee the production for the writer. The name of the novel? Bad Engineer. So, Jean has a clear and simple goal. Write the script to the writer's pleasing until the trailer is done, to get Magical Mystery published and the rent paid. And Hua is now a real threat. His whole future depends on her and the writer's will. Now, before I will defend why I took Bad Engineer out of Jean's publication list, let's first introduce another important antagonist and set him up against Jean goal-wise and personality-wise. New Napsip. Not that new though, we can still go with the contrast between hesitant and nerdy and self-assured and active. But let's add another layer. Because just as Xiaofei's role was to drag Tang Yi to the side of life, Nupsip needs to pull Jean into a world in which BL can make the planet into a better place. Nupsip is now a strong-headed, focused, social justice warrior.
You heard that right.
He's progressive, passionate, and empathetic with the suffering of marginalized people. He wants to make change happen and is ready to get his hands dirty in the process. And this is exactly how we are introduced to him. Jean is on his way to his first meeting with the production team. He's dressed pristinely to make a good impression, a printout of his manuscript in his arms. He wants to show it to the Bad Engineer's writer to get some feedback. Yet, it begins to rain heavily. He seeks shelter in an alcove. Suddenly, in front of him, a gay couple gets attacked by some bullies. He knows he should intervene, but that would mean ruining the transcript and getting to the meeting drenched. He hesitates. Then, someone steps up. Nupsip. Not caring that he will meet the production managers or the writer all dirty and wet. He does the right thing and helps when it needs to be done. And these differences will develop into a fully fledged antagonism when both face our last antagonist during the production meeting. The writer. You may wonder why yet another antagonist when we have Bois and the sponsors, but they're both too far away. We need someone in our lover's way on a daily basis. Someone who represents everything that holds BL back from realizing its full potential. And what better antagonist to a young writer finding his voice than another established writer? How can they make our heroes' lives a living hell? Let's say they have graciously given their rights to Bad Engineer to Fa's rookie production firm to produce a trailer. This is a great chance for Fa because with a big name attached to her first project, chances are excellent it will get picked up. Not only that, if the show is a success, the writer will give access to their backlog, giving Fa the opportunity to become established within the industry long term. Fa's goal, thus, is very clear. Make a trailer that satisfies the writer, bringing her in line with Jean, who needs the writer on his side to make Bois help him get Magical Mystery published. To now get the romantic conflict going, let us use something the show already hinted at. In the meeting, the writer is openly unhappy with Aoi as a choice for a lead. Aoi, for whom this show is the last chance to have a leading role, cannot complain. Nupsip, however, is seething. And not only that, he remembers Jean being a coward in the last scene and sees him trying to be invisible once again. He says, I have read the novel and I think Aoi's mannerisms fit the description of the character perfectly. And Jean? He is a gay or a bi man and a decent human being. He knows he should stand up for Aoi. But again, the manuscript stares at him. He's in total freeze mode until he's saved by Fa. Jean lets out a sigh of relief only to look up in Nupsip's face. A display of pure disdain. And this is our conflict blueprint for the first half. The writer abuses their power, Nupsip wants to defend the crew, and Jean, having his future as a writer in his mind, will keep his head down. And Nupsip hates him for that. Until, in the inciting incident, this escalates during the filming of the first kiss scene. And just as in the show, it's kinda grapey. This time, the writer pressures Nupsip to play it rougher and rougher with each take. Nupsip swallows his anger. He knows Aoi is scared of getting fired. But then, it is too much. Aoi runs into his dressing room, crying. Ba stops the shoot. The writer, furious, leaves. When they are alone, Nupsip finally lashes out to Jean. Jean, overwhelmed by the situation, cannot even defend himself. Then, Aoi comes back. He freaked, he says, because he was in a situation like this. And the scene brought the trauma back. They both listen to Aoi's story, and this is where the change happens. Through Aoi opening up, Nupsip's anger subsides, and Jean, he is a decent guy. And he sees Nupsip caring deeply and is ready to risk something for the first time. What was the worst part of that experience? Jean asks. The shame of not having spoken up for myself, Aoi says. And Jean hurries to his laptop. He will find a write around. He writes a scene that will be close to the writer's scene, but still give Aoi a moment of agency. But it is not that easy. It is getting late. Aoi goes home. And so, it is only Jean and Nupsip who workshop the scene. Nupsip teaching him about the subtleties of consent, and Jean finding the best lines. They work until morning. One last time they play through. But this time, something's different. The exhaustion? Or is it Jean who is mesmerized by Nupsip's passion to defend others, and Nupsip mesmerized by Jean's passion for his craft? When the scene culminates, although they did it 100 times before and always stopped, this time they get carried away. They both lean in, and it is only because the crew returns for the morning shoot that the two of them do not kiss for real. And this will be their dynamic for the following scenes. The writer causes havoc, Nupsip tells Jean what the problem is, and Jean finds a sneaky, elegant way to make the scenes more wholesome and comfortable for the actors. And learns how to sell it to the writer. Yet, before everything gets too harmonious, let's have them clash one last time to rip up the masks completely and introduce Jean's final antagonist. So again, the writer jumps into action. It is time for Nupsip and Aoi to promote the show. And the writer wants it old school, with degrading and sexualized games. A discussion ensues. Jean uses his proof techniques to placate the writer, yet this time it fails. They threaten to fire Jean. But then, it's Mom, and she poses the worst question you can ask an aspiring novelist. Jean, embarrassed and in the midst of the tense moment, lies, and Mom is over the moon. Jean is now reminded of how many problems could get solved by publishing magical mystery and how he needs the writer to be content with him. So when he comes back to the discussion and the writer looks at him fiercely, he becomes a coward again. But this time, Nupsip's disappointment hurts. Has he lost the friendship before it even began? He goes home just to see another rejection letter, and the decision between rebelling with Nupsip and being close to him and appeasing the writer to finally get a foot in the door, it crushes him. He drinks to soothe himself. And somehow ends up with Nupsip. But Nupsip is still mad. Jean, intoxicated, wants nothing more than their closeness back, but Nupsip turns away. Jean, realizing he might have lost, attacks. "It is easy for you to rebel," he screams. All I ever could do was writing. But guess what? Everyone hates the novel I spent years working on. Nupsip doesn't get it. Why it is so important that everyone loves it. But Jean sobs. All I ever wanted was to write. I'm not like you. It's the only way I can show myself and communicate. What if I cannot write? What if I'm bad at it? What will I tell my parents? I have wasted my life. I want to help you, he says, but this is my last chance. Nupsip finally understands. I loved what you wrote for Aoi, he says gently. Jean smiles. This is different. It was the writer's scene and Aoi's feelings. It's not like making something up on your own. I seem to be unable to build a world on my own. My life depended on it. And now Nupsip finally explains why he was here in the first place and why he was so hard on Jean all the time. He tells Jean about his past. About his aunt who was very dear to him. And she loved Lacorn. Young Nupsip, 15 maybe, is watching with her. But he is bored, and she says, when you're as old and ill as I am, you will learn the beauty of something that takes your mind off of all the bad things that happen in real life. Plus, it has taught me a lot about myself when I was your age. Nupsip is incredulous, but she smiles. Whenever I saw a couple like this, I never wanted to be the woman, but the one to come in to whisk her away. Well, of course, he's all awful and bulky and muscly. Nupsip realizes what she was telling him. He says, I think he's fine. I prefer bulky and muscly. He is a creep, though. She takes his hand. Yeah. Maybe one day there will be romance in which what we are and yearn for will be visible without anyone being a creep. You might not be able to build this magical mystery world of yours, or what you call real writing, but the way you changed Bad Engineer for Aoi, I think you could change the real world at least a little bit. If it is only for Aoi, or someone like my aunt, and me. And Jean, deeply moved, caresses Nupsip's cheek. They lean in, and finally, they kiss. But no last base yet. Midpoint is not there yet, and Bad Engineer has a scene that needs to be shot. Again, the writer forces them to play it exactly like it happened in the novel. Forceful and full of old-timey gay stereotypes. But this time, none of Jean's gentle suggestions are being heard. Nupsip, being pushed more and more, cannot keep his cool. Finally, Fa steps in to shield her actors, but again, the writer uses the BL rules to threaten them. If you do not shoot the scene the way I want it, I will out AI. And good luck with a romantic lead that is confirmed to be gay in real life. Fa, knowing that this could mean the end of her company, calms the writer. And with the writer gone, they can talk openly. You know as well as I do, there are already enough scenes like this, Napsip tells her. It is hurtful to us. Fa frowns. Us. And as it turns out, Fa herself has also more skin in the game than money. She has a girlfriend, and they started the firm to finally produce not only BL that is not full of stereotypes, but also depict sapphic relationships, even though they don't get the same attention. We must do better, Napsip says. Fa's exhausted. The pressure is too much. We will, when we have the money to do so. I need a trailer to present. What if there was another script? One that is not fuller. There are none. Fa interrupts him. Why do you think I went with bad engineer? Jean is stunned. He does not move, and Napsip smiles sadly. It is true. Not everyone blurts out everything without fear. But then, there might be one. I mean, it's not written yet. Then who would write it? Asks Fa, eyeing Napsip, who now has the proudest smile on his face. Me? Jean stutters. He looks up to Napsip, who's nodding, elated. Us, says Jean. Us. Then, a montage of Jean and Napsip pulling an all-nighter to write the script. And he is so enthused, and Napsip is so proud and touched by the story Jean came up with. They make out right on top of the pages of their final draft. From here, tension for the second half would come from the crew having to shoot 2 trailers parallel and all the shenanigans they have to come up with to keep the writer in the dark. But the crew has a great time. Finally, they have a say in the process too. Also, the promotion is going well. Now that Aoi is not being mistreated, his and Napsip's chemistry is off the charts. Their hashtag is on the rise. This is when Bois begins to jump into action. She cannot wait for Jean to get famous and find a publisher on his own. She makes some calls. And someone is interested. Meanwhile, the writer is a pain in the ass again, criticizing the campaign, making Aoi miserable. Napsip has enough. He goes to Fa. We need to ditch the old trailer and the writer. Now, he says. The new trailer is great. But that was bad. The writer overhears them and is finally in on the conspiracy. They say, if you do not show the trailer as it was planned, I will tell everyone on that event what I saw your writer and you're mainly doing at midpoint. A show by a gay producer is one thing, but one where the two leads are gay and not in a ship, no one is going to pay one satang for that. So, when the day of the screening comes, our heroes are kinda defeated. But then, an opportunity arises. Fa cannot make it on time. They want to go with the new trailer. Jean is about to hand the new one in. And then, oh my God. He spots his parents in the audience. But the writer has another ace up their sleeve. Wow. She tells Jean there is someone who will publish Magic Mystery. But Jean needs to show the trailer for Bad Engineer. And the writer makes their threat again. I guess you would not want the whole world to know that you do more on set than writing. That makes Napsip lose his grip. Outing someone without their consent? How low can you get? But the writer ignores him. They know Jean's true weak spot. They whisper. I am sure this was fun. But this is not real writing. Ripping off my work, rewriting it, and having others chime in. This is your last chance, Jean, of being a real writer. Do you want to give that up for a script no one in their right mind would ever produce? And your parents, Jean? Yeah. What will you tell your parents? Jean holds his head up high. This one is ours, Jean says. What's the show called? And Jean looks back to Nupsip, and Nupsip gets the proudest grin you've ever seen. It's Lovely Engineer. He takes Nupsip's hand. The lights go out and the trailer plays. Their work. And when it is over, well, not much happens. No one is approaching them. Aoi was too flamboyant, it seems, and the GL storyline, maybe it was too much, too soon, Jean thinks. His parents come to hug him. But then, everybody looks at their phones. Aoi posted the trailer to his fans and came out while he was at it, and the hashtag is now trending. And suddenly, one man in a suit gets up, then another. They're all coming, pans in hand for them, to sign a sponsorship contract. And now everyone is approaching them. A journalist asks, "How did you come up with this story, and will you stay in the BL industry?" Jean looks up. He says, "Well, let us first shoot this one, but I think I already have an idea for another BL show. It is about a young gay writer who finds love and his voice as a writer while working on the set of a BL show." Nupsip smiles again. "And I think I already have a name," Jean tells them. "I will call it Lovely Writer." If you enjoyed this and like to see similar videos in the future, like, share, and subscribe. And, Mom, if you're listening, so, just so you know, the publishing house has dissolved the contract, I had to pay the advance back, and I'm probably not going to finish the novel anytime soon. Bye!